from Kern Government Television. Welcome to this week's Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting. Originating from the County Administrative Center, located at 1115 Truxton Avenue in Bakersfield, California. Grounded in ideas, energy, and innovation, Kern County's vision is to be a driving force for the world's fifth largest economy. And our mission is to exceed expectations of the communities we serve, changing the way they feel about government, those who manage it, and the services it provides. Today's Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting will convene momentarily.
Board to reconvene. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Supervisor Peters.
Here.
Supervisor Scribner.
Here.
Supervisor Maggard.
Here.
Supervisor Couch.
Here.
Supervisor Perez.
Here.
Thank you. Good morning and welcome to the Tuesday, December 13th, 2022, 9 a.m. meeting of the Board of Supervisors. We will begin today's meeting with a flag salute led by Supervisor Maggard. And we'd ask that you please remain standing for a moment of prayer, silence, or meditation, whichever you prefer. Please stand. Thank you. Please be seated. Okay, at this time, I'd like to call on Nick Cullen. Nick is our Director of Animal Services, and he is going to introduce our Pet of the Week. Good morning, Nick.
Good morning.
Who do we have with us today?
He's very frightened right now in my face. Good morning, Chairman Scribner, members of the board. This is Baxter. I'm introducing you to Baxter. Baxter is, he's a little pup. He's about 6 months old. He's a Terrier Chihuahua mix. He's a very sweet boy. He just came into the shelter just a couple of days ago. He's adjusting to the shelter environment, so he's real scared right now. But once he comes out of his shell, he's got a ton of personality. He's going to make somebody a perfect family pet.
All right, well, we wish Baxter the best, and thank you for bringing him out and sharing with us.
Thank you.
Next, we're going to hear from County Counsel Margot Raison for a report on actions taken in closed session from yesterday's 9 a.m. meeting. Ms. Raison, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, board members. Yesterday you met in closed session on two items, items 1 and 2, but there is no reportable action.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to begin by considering the consent agenda, and agendas are located on the tables near the doors for anyone wishing to follow along, so in the rear of the chambers. All items listed with a CA above the item are considered to be routine and non-controversial by county staff. Consent items will be considered first and may be approved by one motion. If a member of the audience wishes to comment or ask questions regarding an item on the consent agenda, they may do so prior to a vote being taken. A member of the board may remove any item from the consent agenda, and it will be considered in listed sequence with an opportunity for any member of the public to address the board concerning the item before action is taken. A member of the public may also comment on any closed session item, and so I will read the consent agenda item numbers now. Starting on page 2 of the agenda, we have items 3 and 4, as well as 7 on consent. On page 3, we have items 8, 9, and 10, as well as 12 through 15 on consent. On page 4, all items 16 through 23 are on consent. On page 5, all items 24 through 31 are on consent. On page 6, all items 32 through 39 are on consent. And finally, on page 7, all items 40 through 45 are on consent. So at this time, I'll ask if there's any members of the audience that would like to make any comments or ask any questions about the consent agenda items. Good morning.
Yes, Chairman Scribner. I'm Vince Mayoko. I have a concern on consent number 12. the renewing of the Dominion voting system. That has been a public concern for a number of years here in Kern County. And ironically, the 2023 year, there's no scheduled elections. So why would we spend $224,000 on a device when there's no scheduled elections? So that's my concern, my questions.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Any other questions or comments on the consent agenda? Good morning.
Good morning, Dennis McLean. I also want to pull that consent agenda number 12 off. Didn't you guys talk about a alternative to the Dominion machines earlier this year? What happened to that alternative? Out the window, or no? So could you respond to that, please? Have you talked it over or looked into that option? Please respond to that.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Leilani Tedeschi. With regards to the same approval item, number 12, I ask that you table that until there's further exploration, investigation, potentially the costs involved. It's like rubber stamping something. The county's always seeking avenues for raising revenue, and the expenses associated with this, I believe, need to be further explored. So I'm asking that you table it until there's further insight into exactly what it is, how many machines. I've sat in and observed the processing of ballots. Not all the machines are used, so we're rubber stamping something where just a fraction of the machines might be necessary. And whether we even want these machines, perhaps there's another option out there that's more cost effective. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on the consent agenda?
I second what Leilani just said, and Vince. How about good old
Can you
counting-
provide us your name, please?
I'm sorry. Pamela Reese, R-E-E-C-E. How about good old counting in the precincts after the election's over? We count it, we get a subtotal per precinct, and we have a roundabout total, and then it couldn't take much longer than 2 days to count the votes, tally them up, and know the results of the election. I think it'd be great, because as far as the Dominion goes, it sucks. It's a terrible system, and we all know it, and I just hope you consider it. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, Duetta Riley, D-U-E-T-T-A Riley, R-E-I-L-L-Y. I want to be on record opposing this Dominion renewal. There are many problems with this election. I went and observed multiple times. I'm going to tell you, that machine's part of the problem, a big part. It's called stolen elections, so I'm demanding an audit. I've asked you before. But pull this off the consent agenda, because it's a problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on consent? Okay, seeing none, I'll return to the board for any questions, comments, or action.
I'm punched in, Zach.
Supervisor Perez.
Thank you. I'll make a motion on consent.
Okay, Supervisor Couch.
I'm going to ask for separate consideration of item 12.
Okay. Okay, so we will consider 12 in listed sequence. And any other comments on the consent agenda? We do have a motion to approve with item 12 being pulled for separate consideration.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved. All ayes.
Thank you. Now that returns us to page 2 of our agenda. And the first item is under resolutions and proclamations. And this is a resolution honoring Supervisor Mike Maggard for his dedicated and distinguished service representing the 3rd District of Kern County. This is Supervisor Maggard's final meeting with us after 16 years, and so we're pleased to be able to offer this resolution. I'm going to make the presentation, but I do need a motion for approval
So
on
moved.
item 1.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved. All ayes.
Thank you. And Supervisor Maggard, if it is agreeable to you, I'm going to read the resolution from up here on the dais. A lot of times we go down here, but we're both sitting up here, so we'll just go ahead and do it from here. So this is a resolution honoring and commending Supervisor Mike Maggard for his dedicated and distinguished service representing the 3rd District of Kern County. Whereas 3rd District Supervisor Mike Maggard was elected to the Board of Supervisors in 2006 and has proudly served the areas of East Bakersfield, Northwest Bakersfield, La Cresta, and the north of the river communities of Oildale and Rosedale throughout his past 16 years. Prior to his service on the board, Supervisor Maggard represented the city of Bakersfield as a councilman for 8 years, where he established the Northeast Bakersfield Parks and Trails Plan, secured additional law enforcement personnel, and passed the Bakersfield Hillside Ordinance, which to this day protects the beauty and unique character of the Kern River Bluffs. And as a Bakersfield native, Supervisor Maggard holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Business Administration from California State University, Bakersfield, and is a certified public accountant who continues to own and operate his local business, Maggard & Company CPAs, which he founded in 1982. And during Supervisor Maggard's esteemed tenure on the board, he led Kern County and its workforce of nearly 8,000 employees, as well as nearly 1 million residents through numerous challenges, including the COVID-19 pandemic, life-saving reformation of local skilled nursing facilities, responsible expenditure of a nearly $3 billion annual budget, advocacy of one of Kern County's most pivotal industries of oil and gas, unprecedented investment in local parks, including being a leading advocate for the protection and preservation of the Kern River Parkway, implementation of the Hart Park Master Plan, and the construction of Hart Park's new Nature Center, as well as historic job development initiatives. And Supervisor Maggard elevated Kern County's work to address the homelessness epidemic, including championing Kern County's No Camping in Public Right-of-Ways ordinance, the expansion of homeless engagement and enforcement activities by Kern County Public Works and Behavioral Health and Recovery Services, and the construction of the county's first 150-bed low-barrier navigation center, which has provided wraparound services, job training and placement, and permanent housing for hundreds of individuals experiencing homelessness. And Supervisor Maggard served his community with heart and tenacity to empower and elevate his district through a series of innovative projects within multiple Kern County parks, including the Kern River Wildlife Preserve, the refurbishment of the Hart Park Adobe House, and other amenities, improvement and extension of the local bike path along the Kern River corridor, beautification and upgrades of Panorama Park, implementation of spray parks in Pioneer and Sears Parks, and new street lights and sidewalks to increase pedestrian safety and access within his represented communities. And in addition to his commitment on the board, Supervisor Maggard also served on a myriad of other local committees, including the Children and Families Commission, Community Action Partnership of Kern, Emergency Council, Emergency Medical Care Advisory Board, Joint Standing Committee on Gang Violence, Juvenile Justice Coordinating Council, Kern Economic Development Corporation, Kern Medical Center Joint Conference Committee, Kern Medical Center Foundation, Museum Authority, Retirement Board, KSERA, Treasury Oversight Committee, and Water Resources Committee, among others. And because of Supervisor Maggard's skilled leadership and passion for his community, his positive impact will be felt for decades among his district and Kern County as a whole. Now, therefore, it is resolved that the Board of Supervisors of the County of Kern, State of California, does hereby honor and commend Supervisor Mike Maggard for his esteemed leadership on the Board of Supervisors and to the County of Kern upon his retirement with 16 years of dedicated service to Kern County. And this resolution is signed by all 5 members of the Board of Supervisors. Mike, it's been an honor and a privilege to serve with you. We wish you the best in your next adventure, and may God bless you and your family. Thank you so much, and I'd like to go there and present you with this resolution. Would you like to say something, or do you want to? Okay, you bet. Supervisor Couch?
I'm happy to let you go first if you'd rather do it that way. Okay. You want to know what I'm going to say first, right? Okay. I just want to compliment you on a long career in public service. We all know that you have a successful business as well, but you've spent, and I don't recall, is it 6 or 8 years on the school board? 6, and then we served on the city council together, and we've served here, and I've enjoyed it, and I want to just mention one thing. You'll recall it, I think, very early on after we were elected the same year to the city council, 1998, I think. Seems like an awful long time ago. But we had a conversation. We didn't know each other that well. We sort of knew of each other and had maybe met. But we had a conversation right after we met, and we decided that if we ever disagreed on anything, or if we were at odds over a vote or whatever, that when that vote was taken, when the issue was passed, that we would just turn the page, I think is the expression we used, and we would go on to the next thing. And there haven't been that many things that we haven't agreed upon. That we've had a couple of tense moments, but what I've always admired about you is you kept your word with that, is we turned the page and we went back to work for the people that we represent. So that was honorable. You were honorable, you've served honorably, and I just congratulate you on a long and successful career. People have been fortunate to have you represent them. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Peters.
Thank you, Chairman. Supervisor Maggard, I just wanted to say that I know I've worked with you less than pretty much everybody else up here, but you've been a great example of a leader in all the public service that you've offered to the community, and I've really appreciated your leadership and your guidance in the short time that we have got to work together, and you've been a great example so far, so I wish you the best of luck in your next endeavors.
Thank you. Supervisor, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. I am blessed and honored to receive this and your affirmation this morning. I am truly a blessed man that God allowed me to be involved in public service as he has, and I will always be grateful for that blessing. I am also extraordinarily blessed with my wife, who has put up with many things over the years, been a great confidant, and although the public doesn't know this, she has the best political mind I have worked with in all the years I've been in public service. She has great insights and has thought of many extraordinary programs and services and things in our community that's been that way since the very beginning. So I want to thank Mary for that. I want to thank the staff at the county, and including the board, for their support over the years. Nothing can happen without everybody working together, and it has been extraordinary for me to watch the staff of the county stand up and do what needed to be done. It's much different in the government sector than it is in the private sector. In the private sector, you're rewarded financially for your efforts, and you work harder, you make more money. That's not the case in government. You get a salary, and that's what your salary is, and nothing's going to change that until the next time a raise comes, and that's very, very far and few times that happens. So government employees are motivated by something else, and that's service. And I've come to really respect the people that work here at the county and at the city and at the city schools before that for their selfless effort to make life better for other people, even when it's going to make very little difference in their own life. They are committed to doing that. And I just admire that and want to thank them and all of you who helped me work with so many things. If I start mentioning names, I'll leave somebody out. So I've talked to those of you that I have encountered to thank you already. So I will leave that at that for now. Most of all, I want to thank the people of our community. They were gracious enough to support me in this endeavor all these years. It is an honor and to be chosen by your hometown to do things. So without belaboring it any longer, I want to thank them and thank you all very much for this. I will be gone, but I will not forget the great things that we attempted to do for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. And we have one other member of the county family to honor. Item number 2 is a certificate of recognition honoring Alan Christensen for his 10 years of dedicated service to Kern County. And Supervisor Peters will make this presentation, and this item requires no motion. Yep. Yep. As Supervisor Peters makes his way down, Mr. Christensen will meet him at the podium.
Never too young.
That's what I'm saying. He's doing what I want to do when I grow up. Thank you, Chairman and board members. It's my honor to present this certificate of recognition to Alan Christensen for his 10 years with the County of Kern. How long have you been in public service in total, Alan? I know you were with the City of Bakersfield before?
33 years.
33 years. Wow, that's awesome. Well, Alan, a lot of you may not know him, but he's always working behind the scenes to make sure that the tough issues that we're trying to tackle get taken care of. And he's usually the calm voice of reason when everybody else is absolutely losing it in my office over one issue or another. But I have really appreciated and valued Alan's leadership on these issues, his advice, which I've asked a lot of times. And with your retirement, it's going to be a loss for Kern County, but it's going to be a benefit to the other people that you're moving on to help serve in retirement. So congratulations, Alan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
I guess I need to say something, huh?
Might as well.
All right.
Oh, we got you here.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Supervisor Peters, Chairman, members of the board. You know, I wax nostalgic. I started actually in the city manager's office in 1998, the same time Mr. Couch and Mr. Maggard were there. So we've seen a lot of the same things. Anyway, so you know, I didn't have any prepared remarks, and I was thinking about some things. Now I'm kind of not sure. Everything's kind of going blank. It's been a great opportunity to work for the county. I appreciate the Board of Supervisors' support throughout all the projects and things I've worked on, and the great employees. I've met a lot of great, dedicated employees, and I hope that I've made a difference. That's been my goal, is to make a difference in some way. I will say that one of the things that satisfies me the most, and it's sort of the grungy work of local government, is helping people that are frustrated and don't really have a voice. And so, you know, every once in a while you run into somebody that can't get something done. And, you know, when you're in a position to, you know, sort of rattle some chains, I feel like I can do that sometimes. And that gives me the most satisfaction when people say, you know, hey, I actually got down to the county and somebody helped me, or at least tried to. And so I sort of take pride in that if I can. There's sometimes I can't. We can't, you know, because, you know, the limitations on ordinances and laws and policies and so forth. You know, I do have to say, just because it's an opportunity, we've retired. When I say we, my wife Renee's here. She's awesome. She's the person that got to hear hear about my day. And so, good or bad, when I was frustrated or when I was, jubilant or whatever, and everything in between. And she's been a great support. So we've been, Supervisor Peters alluded to it, and I think it's important to say what we're doing. We've been called to serve as a mission in Côte d'Ivoire, Africa, for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints for a year. And Côte d'Ivoire is Ivory Coast. My French skills aren't that good, but that's the one thing I do know. So we're excited. Renee and I will go together, and there's a lot of young missionaries there that need support. They need adult supervision. They need people to pay bills. They need people to, just make sure things function properly. And the parents of some of these young people are really glad that they have some adult supervision there. So we're happy to do that and have that adventure. So I'm excited for that, and just thank you for the recognition. That's all. Thank you.
Well, Alan, I know we have some folks that want to say a few words, and I'm gonna go to the CAO and then come back to the board. CAO Ryan Alsop, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I want to say thank you to Supervisor Peters for doing this for Mr. Christensen. And I want to tell Mr. Christensen that he has, in fact, made a difference, whether you know it or not, and in the lives of a lot of people, including those that you've worked around. And I have no doubt that you'll make that same kind of value-added difference in helping the missionaries in Africa, no doubt about it. But Alan served as a senior staff person in my office on the CAO's executive management team. He was on our staff when I took the job, when you appointed me CAO. So it was good to come into this job and have somebody there with the kind of wisdom and experience Alan had. Alan's been around in a lot of leadership positions in this county for a long period of time, and he was somebody that was good to lean on, bounce things off of. He played the role, a very critical role in managing water issues for our office. As you very well know, those are very complex and at times heated. And he was a very calming, experienced voice there, kind of sifting through all of the issues. And I think, in hindsight, getting us into a position that, looking back, he made some good calls. So I appreciate that. But lastly, I think the very best thing about Alan is just the fact that he's just a good human being overall. He's just a good guy. Gets along with everybody, has a great demeanor, positive, and that's what I'll always remember about Alan and what he brought to our office and to our team, and I wish he and his wife the very best abroad. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Supervisor Maggard?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Alan, I'd like to talk to you for a moment about some personal interactions that we have had. Lots of things have been said about your public service, and I'm grateful for that as well. Congratulations. But I'm going to tell you all a few things about Alan that you might not otherwise know. His nickname is AC, as we would refer to him over the years. We were both much younger men when I came to the city council, and I remember that you and I went to the park and played basketball with some people from the police department and the city manager and others. And you don't know that Alan is a very competitive fellow. You might assume I'm a very competitive fellow, but Alan, AC, is a very competitive fellow, as were others who were very competitive that I'm not going to mention today as to how competitive they were. But there was much, much more than just some 35 to 45-year-old guys playing basketball. Much more going on than that when we had those games. And that was fun to be able to share that with you. And I appreciate you never underbridged me and cut my legs out from under me. Thank you for that. I remember standing on the floor of the Rabobank Arena, and we stood on the turf for the first time and felt it. And what would this be like to cut, to run on and run pass patterns and whatnot. And there was a pickup football game there that I never played in, but AC did. And he was known as one of the ones who could still run a pattern and get it done until he, as I recollect, it was your hamstring that gave way and he was not able to run much anymore. Oh, you don't? Okay, well, maybe I have the wrong AC. I don't know. One last thing, besides how much I personally enjoyed you, Alan, and I admire and respect you, I thought you would enjoy knowing, everyone, that there's a certain time of year that my office is full of chocolate. And it is in preparation for something called Trunk or Treat that we do in Oildale. And 1,000, 1,500, maybe a ton of chocolate literally is in my office in those days. Who else is in my office for those weeks coming up to that is Mr. Christensen. And it happened every once in a while that one of those bags of chocolate would get a slit in them, and we could rely on the fact that AC would drop by and say hi and snag a couple chocolates when he was there. So I will miss those days with you, Alan, and wish you well, and God bless you and your family.
Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Couch.
That's funny because he eats a lot of candy in the District 4 office as well. Alan, I just want to say that my observations of you are that what you just said, that you have a heart for people. And I didn't realize we came into the city in the same year, in '98. But I've just appreciated working with you. You were a tremendous help. People don't know this. When I came here, you helped me in my office for a couple of years. And I think Ryan made an observation that, and you said it, you tried to leave every place that you worked better. I can assure you, you left my office in a better position. And I think you've done that everywhere you've gone. And that's as good as you can do in most jobs. Leave it better than you found it. So I wish you and Renee all the best, but thank you very much for all your service. I've really appreciated it. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. Well, Alan, I haven't known you as long as Supervisor Maggard or Couch, but I did have the privilege of working with you on the Bakersfield City Council when I was elected in 2004, so not too many years after you had started. And my experience with you is so much similar to what Supervisor Maggard and Couch has explained. A tremendous heart for serving the community, and also a calming and a steady hand, whether it was community meetings that we were organizing out in my ward, or difficult issues that the council was facing. And I was pleased to see you go on at some point in your career and serve as city manager for some of our smaller communities that I think you came in and were a stabilizing force and helped to get them on the right track. And as you came over here, you were thrust into the very complex and sometimes emotionally charged issue of groundwater sustainability agencies and SGMA, the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. So I'm guessing when you're on the Ivory Coast, if you never hear the acronyms GSA, GSP, or SGMA, you'll probably be a happy man. So I will send you off with that wish. But best wishes to you in your upcoming adventures, to you and your family. God bless. We appreciate you. You've been a tremendous public servant for the people of Kern County. Thank you, and Merry Christmas. All right. Okay, we're going to move on now to item number 5 on our agenda. This is public presentations. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons to address the board on any matter not on this agenda, but under the jurisdiction of the board. Board members may respond briefly to statements made or questions posed. They may ask a question for clarification, make a referral to staff for factual information, or request staff to report back to the board at a later meeting. Also, the board may take action to direct the staff to place a matter of business on a future agenda. So at this time, we'll ask if there's any members of our audience that would like to make a public presentation. We ask that you state your name, and you are limited to 2 minutes, please. Good morning.
Good morning, supervisors. Honorable Supervisor Perez, Honorable Couch, Honorable Chair Scrivener, Honorable Peters, and the man of the hour, Honorable Supervisor, 3rd District, Maggard. 1992, President, Bakersfield City School District. And what you did, you lifted barriers. And yes, I'm Dee Slade, President of the African American Network of Kern County, Lieutenant General, Buffalo Soldiers, Bakersfield. You removed barriers to learning, opened the gate for every child to have a shot at an education. But then you decided to move on to the City Council. That was after our good friend, our Supervisor Patrick, retired. You walked in and we were looking at, okay, ethics is at the helm, integrity is there, manners and common courtesies, and that's what you represent. You have prevailed throughout your public service in respect for others, for their comments, for their negative, for their positive, reaching across the table with an olive branch, settling the storm. Maybe you're raging, but you are quieting the storm and giving the residents from all the districts, not just yours, an opportunity to share their vision, their concern. And for that, we present to you, thanking you for over 30 years, not just 30, but plus because you went out and beyond, not just staying silo with your district, but observing the other districts and I'm sure reaching out to your colleagues on certain issues that were brought to your attention. From the census of 2010 to the census of 2020 to the pandemic, oh my gosh, that was a shot, a low shot in the arm. But guess what? Through your guidance, we're still standing and we're here. And I thank you on behalf of the organization I represent, Supervisor Maggard. In closing, I teach etiquette and manners. Thank you to his family, because you know what, elected officials, you have to balance home. Public officials have no rules. The home rules the rules. So thank you to his family, his sons, his wife, and all of them for allowing him to represent my interests and every resident in the city of Bakersfield and the county of Kern. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Anna Lavin. I'm the Executive Director of the Bakersfield-Kern Regional Homeless Collaborative, and I believe before you should have received 2 flyers. So I wanted to share with the Board of Supervisors as well as the entire county. We have a couple of really important critical events coming up. The first is the point-in-time count that will take place on Wednesday, January 5th from 4:30 a.m. to 9 a.m. And as always, did I say 5th? I apologize. January 25th. It's a little different, towards the end of January. And as always, we are looking for many community volunteers to help us support the point-in-time count. Point-in-time count is where we go throughout the wee hours of the morning, looking to literally count those who are experiencing homelessness, engage them for a brief survey so that we can get critical information about the kinds of resources and needs we have with regard to people who are experiencing homelessness. We are always grateful that the county supports their employees in terms of providing volunteerism for that really, really important event, but we wanted to make sure that all of you know about that as well. Any members of the public who want to sign up as volunteers can go to our website. That is bkrhc.org. So just look up the Homeless Collaborative and it should just pop right up on your Google search. The other item I wanted to share with you quickly is that we are hosting the second annual Homeless Persons Memorial Vigil. That will be on Wednesday, December 21st at 10 a.m. at the Historic Union Cemetery. This year, this event is being planned by those with lived experience in honor and memory of those who have passed away who experienced homelessness. So we invite members of the public to attend that event as well, and always open for any questions or comments. Anyone is welcome to reach out to us through our website. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Perez.
And I have a question for you. Thank you so much for your presentation. I've not seen anything like this before. This is really, really special. I want to thank you for that. I think that's really the kind of culture change, right, and shift in how we think about each other as neighbors, right, as brothers and sisters in this community. So I want to commend you for that. I think that's really extraordinary. Thank you for the invitation. How many do you have right now, volunteers? How many do we need? And can you keep us updated so we can make requests to the public? I mean, this is all about the money we get, Anna, right? The accuracy of our numbers and our ability to lobby effectively. So can you just give me a quick sense, how many volunteers do we need, right? How many do we have? And what can we, how do we make sure that we're maximizing, the efficiency of that?
Absolutely. So this is hot off the press. You're the first folks who are receiving it. We know that the county is a tremendous partner with us. We work really closely with Amanda Reese in the CAO's office, as well as other county department heads. Our goal is about 500 volunteers. Again, we're trying to cover 8,200 square miles of Kern. That's a pretty decent chunk of square footage that we're really trying to get to. So we have some really great strategies we're deploying this year, but anybody who is interested and available in volunteering, we really appreciate that their willingness. The other thing I would add too is that oftentimes what we hear back from the volunteers is that not only do they help us, but they get something out of it in return because they have an opportunity to engage those vulnerable neighbors in a way they don't usually get to engage them. So, but yeah, we're looking at about 500 volunteers, and we can definitely make sure to keep the Board of Supervisors as well as the CAO's office, who participates on our committee, up to date on where we stand with numbers.
And I think because time's of the essence, it's one day, it will determine our funding for a year. I mean, it's not a small deal. So thank you, but if you could keep the pressure on, we can ask people, we can do Facebook announcements, to make sure that Kern County has the funds we need to properly address this issue. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hey, Paul Infesti, Mike Maggard's District 3 representative. I'm nowhere near as eloquent a speaker as D. Slade is, but I did want to add some comments when I was a classified employee. Mike Maggard was known as somebody who was very fair and respected the work that classified people did when supervisors didn't necessarily do that, but he went out of his way to show that we were important to the operation of the district. And if there were a lot of problems that popped up in the district, he knew to go to the top of who was in charge of the school district. And we were all aware of that, classified employees. I said that we did respect you a lot because you did respect us and knew the job we did. Also, some of the things you did after you left the district, which were good. I used to live off of Oswell and Niles in a little cul-de-sac, Glenwood Place, where they had these used car sales things that were going on in the parking lot. And you spoke out against those and took some actions behind the scenes. This was when I was living in the unincorporated part of Kern County. And also, you talked about those beautiful bluffs as you go out to, and didn't want really development to just come in and tear something that's unique to us, I think, and the whole valley possibly. But that's a beautiful area. And also the bike paths where I got a lot of exercise before I damaged my foot 4 years ago, which kept me healthy walking those bike paths, which were a really good thing for this community. So I just wanted to, also, you did point out the importance of proper planning with that mess off of Mount Vernon with all those different fast food restaurants. They're kind of like, you're going to get, I always think I'm going to get in a car accident when I go in there. I haven't, but it takes a lot of work to pay attention. So I just wanted to thank you for all of your service, and I really hope you have some really great endeavors after you leave here next month. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. I appreciate it. And thank you, Dee, for, again, for your kind words.
Next speaker, please.
Good morning, Supervisors and Chairman. It's my pleasure to report back to you of a couple of very exemplary activities that occurred this last weekend. First was on Saturday. Some of you were there for the Kern County World War II Veterans Memorial. So I've come full circle, presented information on the Congressional Medal, Gold Medal awarded to my father-in-law, Frank Lee, and then to see his name on the back of one of those pillars there, and photographing the event while being there with my family was a great event. I did great credit to our community to have over 1,000 people show up, and some of those veterans, this will be the last big event for them. So I just wanted to thank you for being able to share with you these events, because it's a big thing for our community. And the second event, the next day, we went to the Chabad Holocaust Memorial. I've been to events like this, but this one was really special because the guest speaker was 100 years old, and he was as spry as anybody here. And he got up and he survived 12 different extermination camps during World War II. And he came and spoke eloquently and at length. And this is one of those things that we recall what we owe to those who fought in that war, both to advance our cause and also to rescue people in concentration camps. For those people who never had a chance to talk to anybody involved with that, in my working days, I met people who served in the military, and they were there liberating those camps, and they all were just totally blown away, didn't have anything to say. It was the most horrible thing they've ever said. So in a day when some people deny the existence of those events, they are real, and the last witnesses are able to speak to us. So thank you.
What's your name, please, sir?
My name is Wayne Wong.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments.
Thank you, Wayne.
Next speaker, please.
Chairman Scrivener, members of the board, I'm Steve Montgomery, the chair of the Kern County Chapter Sierra Club. Good morning. In addition to the letter that the chapter has shared, I just wanted to discuss a couple of points about the Tiny Oak Supportive Services Village project. We consider that to be somewhat rather ill-considered for the location that it's being sited at, anticipating the behavior of the clientele that will be using that facility. We need to look at how similar facilities in other communities here in this Central Valley have fared, and what happens to the surrounding areas, in particular with the reference to the occupancies that are nearby, including the senior center that's directly across the street, and how they behave in the places where they now camp. Anyway, that's all I have in addition to the letter that we sent. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Leilani Tedeschi. Good morning. I'm speaking specifically about a California Public Record Act request that I submitted over 1 year ago to the Kern County Elections Division and also to Mr. Ryan Alsop. On December 14, 2021, Mary Bedard confirmed receipt and stated that they were in the process of searching for records and that she expected the search to be completed January 3, 2022. On January 6, 2022, I asked Ms. Bedard what time I could retrieve the data items She replied they're still gathering information and anticipated it would be available sometime next week. On January 7th, Laura Cantu sent me an email requesting clarification of an item. I responded on January 10th in detail. On January 24, 2022, I emailed Laura Cantu and Mary Bedard to ask what the status was. On the 26th of January, I was informed by Laura Cantu that one of the 14 data items was available to pick up. In February 2022, I stood here and asked the board and advised the board of assistance in encouraging Ms. Bedard to respond. She said she's still working on it. In mid-June, the same. I spoke here. It's over 365 days later. I've yet to receive a response on any of the other items. This isn't just the one incident. On June 17th and 20th, I submitted questions to the board while observing the primary election. Laura Cantu finally sent me an email on June 29th saying that my questions are going to be considered under the California Public Records Act. And after the certification of the primary, they would respond. Nothing. On June 17th, Mary Bedard sent an email to me as well as over 20 other citizens saying the questions that we submitted would again be considered under the California Public Records Act. And after the certification, they would respond. Nothing. I'm asking the board to please hold Mary Bedard, Laura Cantu, and Amy Espinoza accountable and responsible to these numerous requests. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm going to take my mask off. Good morning, Honorable Board of Supervisors. Supervisor Maggard, thank you for your service. I'm here this morning. I'm Kathleen Arnold Chambers, and I'm a marriage family therapist in our community. I have done that for 30 years. Prior to that, I was a recreation supervisor when I first came to Bakersfield as a young woman at the Rasmussen Center, and I worked beside Bill Rasmussen to establish the center for vulnerable seniors in our community. So I'm here this morning. I'm still a marriage therapist, but I'm also speaking on behalf of the seniors at the Rasmussen Center. I have spent a lot of time visiting them recently. This is a very active, thriving community. These are people who know how to live. They live one day at a time because, you know, I'm in my 70s. You don't always know, but boy, you want to enjoy it while you can. And they know that there is a group of homeless people that will be their neighbors very soon. So number one, maybe things got off on the wrong foot. They were suddenly told about this project in the newspaper after the fact, after the decisions were made. That was unfortunate. Our seniors can be wonderful neighbors, but they're going to need to be included in this process. And what we're asking for, hopefully, county staff moving forward can meet with the seniors, not just the administration. Hear the voices of these human beings. They have been at this Rasmussen Center for 44 years, finding ways to survive everything, including the pandemic, together. And they're back dancing, they're having lunch together. They know how to live, and we can all learn from them. And I need to go back there more and do more dancing because it was a very joyful place. Please consider having meetings with the seniors. Spread your time out. Don't rush in with the bulldozers. Talk with the people. Learn from them. They're doing something right. They've survived the last 44 years at that center, and we want to have that community to go on thriving. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Who'll be next, please?
Hi, I'm Julie Carter, and I'm the owner of the Mobiletown USA, 140-space mobile home park located at 400 East Roberts Lane. And I agree with the last speaker. Many of my residents actually walk down to the senior citizen to use it. Mobiletown and its residents have invested in Oildale, and we are opposed to the Supportive Services Village project. Here are some of our concerns. Crime. There continues to be an increase in people trespassing on Mobile-Town's property by breaching the perimeter fences. They steal items from the residences' driveways, mailboxes, yards, sheds, and occasionally we have a home break-in. How can the county be sure that the village will not further increase these types of incidences and put additional stress on law enforcement? Will there be consequences for illegal activity inside and outside the village? Safety. The intersection of Roberts Lane and Northchester is a popular gathering place for Oildale's homeless population. It is also where drug deals go down, crime against people are committed, and trash gets dumped. It's a very scary place. Will Oildale streets be safer? Will the Oildale homeless be given priority placement in the village? The neighborhood. In the residential areas surrounding Mobiletown, the housing is old and substandard, with code violations, trash, and debris the norm. Good people live in these neighborhoods, but so do drug addicts and criminals. Why this neighborhood, which already struggles with crime, safety, and homelessness? Is housing really the answer? Beardsley Avenue's Church Without Walls recently conducted a survey of the homeless people they serve in Oildale, and housing was not a top priority. Drug is the big issue they reported, along with theft of their belongings, such as legal documents and prescription drugs. Homelessness is a complex problem. The Supportive Services Village project, while a noble attempt to house a few, will not help the many. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Eddie Lane. Congratulations to Supervisor Maggard. I want to address the Tiny Village proposal. I have a couple of pictures. Can you put those up, please, Madam Clerk? Common sense, the homeless issue is a drug issue. Drugs are the primary reason why this population is not capable of living in a community environment, to quote from Kern County's description of this proposal. Yet this $2.8 million Tiny Village proposal provides $50 million upfront with $0 upfront for drug testing, drug treatment, drug counseling, and rehabilitation. Whether in a tent or in a cabin or in a mansion, if the drug issue isn't dealt with, all we're doing is housing people with addictions who are and will continue to be a danger to themselves and to others. In Portland's experience, only $4 million of the $27 million approved to deal with this problem was for infrastructure. Where is Kern County's $10 million to $15 million to address the continuum of 24-hour care required to address these issues? Thank you for the clerk for distributing a couple of pictures. These show the streets adjacent to the homeless cabins in Fresno. Transpose these pictures to Roberts Lane and Hart Street in Oildale, next door to the Senior Center and a block from Teen Challenge. And remember, Teen Challenge is for rehabilitation of young women with drug and alcohol problems. These pictures are where this proposal is leading. Or visit King Street by the Mission downtown, or visit Union Avenue across from Turning Point. The County of Kern and the City of Bakersfield have let the nearby Kern County Parkway become a highway for drugs. The result, recurring homeless encampments, trash, drug deals, dangerous dogs, and illegal fires destroying the fragile habitat. Unsafe for public use. With its new ranger program across the river, the city is beginning to make a good faith effort to address these problems. However, this tiny village would undercut these efforts, with residents coming and going, enabling drug use and abuse. This decision ought not be based upon which supervisorial district gets money. Common sense, don't expand the scope of the homeless problem. Wise decision makers listen to concerned voices from the community. They were not consulted about this proposal. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I see our CAO, Ryan Alsop, has punched in. Mr. Alsop?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to ask Ms. Kraus to do the overhead camera because I'd like to show you another location with pictures, please. So I took these yesterday morning on my way into work, first thing coming out of the weekend, early morning. If you're going to find encampments, or people taking advantage of camping in public spaces, then this would be the time. This is the entrance to another location that Mr. Lane didn't mention, but I wanted to mention it to you, your M Street Navigation Facility, which has 150 beds, in addition to a 50-spot safe camping area and a safe parking area. This is the primary entrance to that facility, and if you'll notice, and I've seen the pictures that you have, they're full of people walking around the streets in a county 2 hours away, but this is maybe a mile away from where we're currently situated. This picture is a little bit further down the street, further south toward Golden State, as you can see, pretty clean, free of encampments. This is also a picture driving on Golden State, I guess westbound, in a big spot. There's some adobe structures. Mr. Montgomery will know those facilities. And you can see across that whole area, no encampments. This is going around the M Street Navigation Facility. When you go all the way around and you turn on that next street, I can't remember what it is, James, and you head all the way to the back, this is our safe camping area at M Street. You can notice the gate. People have a couple of their belongings, their shopping carts parked there. There's a car parked, but behind those gates there are 50 tents. There are 50 people camping in there who are all being registered into our systems, who are all receiving services, who are all being engaged with. And from this location, we have placed, I believe, 21 people into permanent housing right out of this location before even going into the low barrier shelter, which is located next door. But I wanted to show you this because the two streets that lead into this area, I have pictures of. One is coming from, I don't know, maybe it's San Dimas or Q, going eastbound. All the way down at the end is that picture that I just showed you. That's the street. It's pretty bare. Not a lot going on there. Certainly no encampments. And then this is the view from that gate at M Street, looking southbound toward Golden State. The adobes are in there. Again, there are no encampments there. I'm showing you this because if you recall back when we were discussing M Street, there was a lot of discussion about, as a editorial in the Californian said today, if you build it, they will come. Having people, having it act as a magnet, people walking around, being hit by cars on Golden State, that's not happening. And it's not happening because we have a good manager there. We have good neighbor policies in place. I am going there on a weekly basis. Mr. Zervis is going there on a weekly basis. We are engaging with CAPK to make sure that that facility is humming along and is making sure, it's a safe area. There are businesses located here. We have county staff located directly across the street. We have houses that are located on the other side of the railroad tracks near this vicinity. This is a good, well-run operation, and I wanted to make sure that that was also made available to you. And I just wanted to say a couple other things. I'm sorry to be riding on Mr. Lane's testimony here. So this is a non-congregate, this Tiny Oaks, which is not Tiny Oaks, it's Tinny Oaks. It's Tinny Oaks because somebody that we were working with in this process misspelled tiny. And we just went with it. So it's Tinny Oaks, but it's a supportive, it is a non-congregate supportive housing facility that's walled off with one entrance and one exit through an office. You don't even see what's going on inside. And it's full of staff. We have security, we have lighting, we have landscaping, et cetera. And Ms. Chambers, we would be happy to work with NOR to come and provide any sort of updates or have a conversation with anybody that you would like us to have it with, okay? you can reach out. Thank you for this this time.
Thank you, Mr. Alsop. Next speaker, please.
Good morning, and thank you, Board of Supervisors. My name is Joseph Leon. I'm a real estate broker here in Bakersfield, and I represent the property adjoining the proposed Teeny Oaks Village there. And we're opposing this situation or this proposal based on the fact that we initially in 2015 there was a proposal for acquisition of vacant land on Roberts Lane from Bakersfield, California. And the owner's name was Hines Family Trust, who I represent. And then, of course, the buyer was the County of Kern Fire Department. The premises, an approximately 2.89 acres. And the purpose of acquiring the premises is for the county to replace Fire Station 64, currently located at 101 Roberts Lane, Bakersfield, California. When we entered into this agreement, we felt that this was a very good user of the property, not only for the Rasmussen Center next door, but for the community in the whole. Okay, it would enhance the value of the neighborhood, if you will. Mrs. Hines, and I would not, is opposing this, and she tells me that she would have never ever signed an agreement had she known that the purpose of this property was going to be used for what the proposed use is now. And I agreed with her because representing her and looking at the values of properties, there's a value for people as well. I understand that. Okay, but property values, safety factors, we wouldn't put this type of a facility next to a school, would we? What about the senior citizens? Are they vulnerable people there? Where do they have to walk in their parking lots at night? Or can at any time, as far as that goes, and have to address the situation? You know, I just wish that I could pass this agreement out to the Board of Supervisors so that they could evaluate for themselves what it is that we had and agreed to in 2016. Please distribute this to them. Thank you.
Thank you.
And here's a couple of other copies in case you need them.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Thank you.
Good morning, Board of Supervisors, county staff. My name is Rich O'Neill. I'm president of the Kern River Parkway Foundation. O'Neill is spelled O-N-E-I-L. I'm taken back by the previous speaker here, Mr. Leon, his comments about the original purchase of the property and the promises that were made to him at the time, and to the owner, Mrs. Hines, I think he said her name, and the inducements for the sale of that property. This is important, critical information. Did the staff inform the supervisors of this? Prior to today, how can the supervisors and the public make an informed decision without all the facts and the details? This is exactly the reason why we need a public stakeholders meeting. Have everyone express their concerns, and we can all learn all of the facts. Like the ongoing process hasn't even been put together yet, according to Mr. Zervis. So let us practice our democracy and let us get together and talk. We need the senior citizens involved and the people in those trailer courts and so forth. I've given you supervisors a copy of our map. Please hand those out for me. And my opinion letter that appeared in the paper last week on this issue. The Parkway is going to be your neighbor if you decide to build that homeless center there. The red star on the map is a proposed Teeny Oaks. I'm going to have you explain why they call it teeny. What does that mean? I'm going to call it Tiny Oaks. Got used to that, but it's 50 to 100 vulnerable residents. The double barbed wires arrows that I have drawn on the map depict the dispersal of homeless, dispersal of drugs, dispersal of unacceptable and unlawful behaviors. And I've got many years' experience working with this population, not only through my own business, but also as a psychiatric consultant, pharmacist. Within 300 feet of this Tiny Oaks is a marijuana dispensary. Within 300 feet, there are 2 stores selling wine and beer. The illegal drug sales are just a walking distance. County says it's 800 feet.
Mr. O'Neill, you've exceeded your time by about a minute. If you could please bring your comments to a close. Thank you.
I've got a minute left.
You're over the 2 minutes, and it's going into the red.
Oh.
The time was not reset when you started
That wasn't right.
She
There's
said,
something wrong with your
it was
clock.
reset. It was reset. If you could just try to wrap your comments up, please. We appreciate it.
I will. I'm
Thank
almost
you.
done.
Thank you.
But the illegal sales there are there, and it's historical. I worked in that parkway since 1973. And these residents at the Tiny Oaks are not going to be in a prison. They're not going to be locked in, but they're going to be free to wander into the senior center, and the liquor stores, the horse stables where they're stealing every day out there, the trailer parks, and also the parkway area, the destruction that's taking place out there. You're only going to be bringing in more homeless into the Oildale area. I notice that none of us live in this neighborhood that are on the staff and the supervisors. We suggest building a facility such as this in a more of an industrial area or a country road where there's not so much temptation and access to drugs and alcohol.
Thank you, Mr. O'Neill.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please. Good morning.
Good morning, Supervisors. My name's Carol Bender. I reside in District 1, unincorporated Kern. And I'm here on a different note of gratitude for you all. I know you've seen me for a lot of other things over the years. First of all, after listening to everybody else, I want to just say, God bless you all. I hope He guides you through a very difficult year with a lot of difficult issues. You have my support in that and my prayers. First of all, I want to thank Supervisor Maggard. He's never been my supervisor, yet he's been responsive to any questions personally. He's personally reached out to answer all my questions on the various committees he served on over the years. And that's real important. He puts his heart and soul into helping the community. He's a godly man, and he's humble in very many ways. Yes, he's got strong opinions, but he's very respectful, and he's humble, and he gives credit to the community far often than to himself. The other thank you that I have is to all of you supervisors for taking what I believe was perceived as a risk and putting Measure K on the ballot and allowing the people in unincorporated Kern who historically have voted no on everything that had to do with taxes, gave us the option to decide for ourselves. Thank you to the staff. Thank you to all the department heads that spent many, many evenings reaching out to the far edges of our county to educate the public. We don't have enough education to the public. I've been here many times before you where there's been like 3 people in the audience. People don't take the newspaper. They believe whatever they want to believe. With all this election issues, there's so much, having done research myself on what the state requires, we have absolutely no control over. So, again, thank you. I don't have anything else to say on the other issues today. unless we hear something else. But thank you so much again.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you,
Speaker,
Carol.
please. Do I have any other speakers under public comments? Okay, seeing none, then we'll move on to board member announcements or reports. Okay, we have one more. Good morning.
I'd like to, my name's Carol Lair, L-A-I-R. I just wanted to speak in opposition to the Tinny Oaks project. Tinny Oaks doesn't even make sense, but anyway. I'm concerned about continued destruction of the habitat along the Kern River by the homeless. Any place there have been homeless encampments, there's been trash and all kinds of problems along the river. I'm also concerned about the people at the Rasmussen Senior Center and also the residents of Teen Challenge. I'm all in favor of these kinds of projects for the homeless, and I think they're really needed because there's a population that just doesn't fit into community living. But I'm concerned about the location of this project and whether or not other sites were considered, and can other sites be considered now for this? Thank you.
Thank you. So do we have any other, one more time, any other public speakers? Okay, seeing none. Seeing none, I'm going to, did you already spoke today, right? Yes. Thank you, yes, so it's only one shot per person. Okay, we're going to move on now to board member announcements and reports. Supervisor Perez.
Thank you so much, Chairman. I want to take a moment to share with you some thoughts from my heart that are so important to me and to this community. You know, in this business, it is very easy to grow cynical about people that you meet, about things that you see, because, as you all know, things are rarely what they seem on the surface, and people are rarely what they seem. And I have recently had the most incredible privilege to meet a person that has really changed my mind about so many things. I apologize if I get a little emotional here. I want to ask Miss Christina Crompton to come down to the podium, please. I'm not sure if she'll share a few words or not. That's her choice. But I certainly have a few things to say to her and to some of her family members that are here. You look great, Christina.
Thank you, you too, boo. Hi, my name is Christina Crompton.
Hold on.
Hello, District 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. City Council, hello. Admissions, thank you. And I would like to say thank you and giving all praises to God first for giving me an opportunity. And I would love to change the community one step at a time. And I absolutely adore people and animals, and I want to step there and shake it up a little bit and show people the importance of doing this role as a commissioner of animal control, and actually following away and believing in the opportunities that's out there with Mr. Ferdy and my family too, blood and not blood, all of them, we're all working together, and I'm really excited about it. And really changing the community, making it safe for the children to walk in the neighborhoods, because these dogs know how to cross streets and look both ways. And they be in packs. When I was canvassing, baby, we went through it, you know? And I just want to make it safer and a better environment for them and for ourselves.
Christina, thank you. I want to first thank my colleagues for your appointment today to the Animal Commission. And I have a few things I want to say to you. I see your mother back there.
Hey, Mama.
You know, I was absolutely stunned the first time I met you and heard about your story in particular, because I remember 2020 very well. It's a hectic year politically. We had COVID, a shutdown, and Thanksgiving period was a period of a lot of angst here because folks wanted to see their family. They want to be together. And there's all these restrictions and confusion and fear. And that's what all of us were consumed with. But you, the day after Thanksgiving, 2020, lost two of your children. and the father of those children in a DUI accident.
And 2 of my kids survived, thank God. 2.
And I love what you just said right now because, Christina, I have not met a person in my 46 years of living and in 20 years of politics like you. The kind of experiences that you have had, the kind of trauma that you have lived through, and the remarkable ingenuity and great humanity that exists in your heart and in your faith.
I think you're gonna make me cry.
Christina, you are very special. And I am, excuse me for a moment.
You're so awesome.
Forgive me. Your faith in your Creator, your hope after such loss, is something I've never seen. And it's the kind of thing where I've said to myself, if such things ever happen to me, I wouldn't help anybody again. It would end me. And I don't think there are a lot of people who understand trauma and loss to the degree that you have. And to watch you with your love for others, your hope in this community, you have totally blown me away.
Thank you.
And I want to say to you that this commission is going to be made so much more exciting. You know, we're going to turn the volume up. And your particular expertise with trauma, children, with the use of our four-legged friends to heal, is so promising. And I want to say again to my colleagues, thank you for your hope and faith and trust in Christina Crompton. She hails from an incredibly successful, diverse family that has been here multiple generations and continues to contribute in this community. Isaiah Crompton and many, many others. I've been and visited properties of your families that are beautifully pristine and just incredible to see the contributions to this community from your family, Ms. Crompton. And I am so excited to see you in a formal capacity, really share your love and heart for what, one, you have been through, what you know, and what we can do to transform young people who have been through remarkable trauma. So again, thank you for your love. Thank you for your contributions. I believe in you, Christina Crompton. I know you're gonna do great things there, and I think it's only the beginning. So God bless you, Godspeed to you, God bless to your family. You did it right with Christina, Mom.
Thank you, Mama.
And we look forward to your contributions.
Thank
you,
you.
Christina.
You're so special.
Thank you.
Bertie, you gonna say something?
I know.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. Do we have any other board member announcements or reports? Any members of the board? Okay, seeing none, then we'll move on to our next item of business. This is an item under Auditor, Controller, County Clerk. This is item number 11, presentation on the November 8th, 2022 general election. I will turn to our Auditor, Controller, County Clerk, Ms. Mary Bedard. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. And thank you for this opportunity to discuss the November 8th, 2022 election and address some of the issues that have been raised regarding it. First, some statistics. Turnout was 190,705 voters, or 44% of registered voters. Of these, 12% voted at the polls and 88% voted using their mail ballot. Looking at the return method for mail ballots, 56% were returned through the U.S. Postal Service, 27% were dropped off at a poll site, and 17% used an official drop box. This was nearly double the 9% of mail ballots returned using drop boxes in the June primary. Provisional ballots were reduced from 47% of ballots cast at the polls in the June primary, which was due primarily to voters not surrendering their mail ballots, to just 10% of poll place ballots. This reduction was largely due to the use of e-poll books at the poll sites for the first time, so voters did not have to surrender their mail ballot. The main reason for the use of provisional ballots in this election was voters going to the wrong poll site, and this was due largely to changes in poll sites due to redistricting. We did not have as many observers at the poll sites as in the last few elections, but we did have many observers in the election office during the canvass period. I would like to thank the observers who were generally professional and knowledgeable about elections. We did our best to answer their questions and address any issues they raised in a timely manner. Several of the observers complimented my staff on their responsiveness. This was a complicated election for us in terms of the ballots themselves. We had 17 local measures on the ballot, far more than in the past. In fact, that is 4 to 5 times the number of measures on the ballot in recent years. There were some errors on the ballots, which is absolutely unacceptable, but we reached out to voters to provide them with the correct information as soon as we became aware of the issues. We are already in the process of strengthening the controls in the system to ensure that this never happens again. Next, I would like to address some of the issues raised regarding the frequency and speed of updating results. We do update twice a week, as do most other counties. The amount of time it takes to process ballots and update results is largely a function of the rules in place in California for ensuring the security and integrity of the election, to ensure that all eligible votes are counted, but that only eligible votes get counted. With approximately 90% of voters voting by mail, which do take much longer to process and count than poll place ballots, the time it takes to report results does take longer. Some people seem to think that Kern County lags other counties and is an outlier, but a look at actual statistics shows, for example, that on November 15th, which was 1 week after the election, Kern had counted and reported 60% of total ballots. Sacramento County had counted 54% of their ballots at that point. And on November 21st, 13 days after the election, Kern and San Bernardino counties both reached 97% of total ballots counted. Fresno was also at 97% reported at that point. On that same day, Ventura was at 87%, San Luis Obispo at 83%, and Sacramento at 72%. Again, Kern was at 97% of votes reported less than 2 weeks after the election. And while this is not a contest to see who can finish first, although that was Amador County with 26,000 registered voters, differences in resources, including staffing and equipment, can impact the speed of counting. However, the main reason for the time it takes to complete the count are the laws and regulations in place in California. Regarding reporting estimated remaining ballots, the most important thing to remember is that these are estimates. In total, we received over 169,000 vote-by-mail envelopes. And we don't actually get a count of these until you begin processing them. We had well over 100,000 envelopes after Election Day that were put in trays in preparation for beginning the processing. The method that's used to come up with an estimate is first trying to determine how many ballots on average each tray can hold. If it's thought that that's between 400 and 500 ballots, you can take an average of 450, then you multiply that by the total number of trays to come up with an estimate. If it turns out that most of the trays held closer to 500 envelopes, you can be off by thousands of ballots in the estimate. And this can be true for all counties. For example, after Election Day, Alameda County estimated their remaining ballots at 182,120. It was actually over 290,000, a difference of over 100,000 ballots. Orange County estimated their remaining ballots at 404,593, when it was actually 383,167, a difference of over 21,000 ballots. These are estimates. A question has been raised regarding the estimates towards the end of the canvass period, when we can look at how many ballots we have been accepted and are in the process of being counted. One thing we do not include in that estimate is challenged ballots. These are ballots that were returned without a signature on the envelope or where the signature does not appear to match the signature we have on file. While we do not include these in our estimate of remaining unprocessed ballots, since they are currently ineligible to be counted, information on challenges is a matter of public record. Campaigns and other outside groups routinely request this information. They can even get on a list where we will electronically provide them with an updated list of outstanding challenges several times a week. They can then contact their voters to encourage them to cure that challenge by providing a good signature so that we can then count their ballot. So, for example, on November 30th, our estimated unprocessed ballots totaled 720. but the outstanding challenge list had well over 2,000 names on it. So campaigns were fully aware that should those challenges be cured, the number of ballots still to be processed would be higher than the estimated 720. As another example, on November 30th, Fresno County reported estimated remaining unprocessed ballots at 2,600. However, after that date, their vote total increased by 5,405 votes, or 2,805 more ballots than their estimate. Next, I'd like to address some of the media reports regarding some of our equipment during the canvass period. On November 16th, there was a report on CNN quoting someone saying that Kern only has one counting machine. That is false. We operate with 8 tabulators. We do have just one sorting machine. And just to give you an idea, the sorter takes up the space from approximately where the podium is over there to where your board is sitting, and from where I'm sitting here over to where the county administrative officer is sitting. It costs over $500,000 and takes up approximately 20 to 25% of the available space for vote-by-mail processing. The space we currently occupy is the same space elections had 30 years ago, when we had about half the number of registered voters, very few absentee voters, and were using punch cards to vote. In 2021, the county did provide funds to remodel the vote-by-mail area of the election office. At that time, we did discuss with the county administrative office the possibility of getting more square footage, in particular, possibly even taking over at least part of the cafe area outside of the board chambers. However, that was determined not to be feasible, so the remodel did not get us any additional square footage. However, it was able to make the area much more functional, so we were able to double the number of extractors and expand the sorter, although there was not enough space to add another sorter. Next, I'd like to explain what the process is for vote-by-mail ballots. And I encourage anyone who has not done so to go to our website, kernvote.com, where we have 2 videos. One discusses all of our processes, from registration to security. The other specifically addresses vote-by-mail processing, and not only answers questions, but also shows how some of the equipment operates. Vote-by-mail envelopes all have to be processed through the sorter at least 3 times. The first time through, the signature on the envelope is scanned, and we may process 10,000 to 15,000 envelopes at a time. The envelopes then are removed from the sorter while workers compare the signature scanned from the envelope to the signature on file. Once that is done, that batch of envelopes is run through the sorter again, where it separates the envelopes whose signature was deemed good from those needing further review. The good envelopes are then run through the sorter a 3rd time, where they are sorted into their individual precincts. Kern has 762 precincts. Each of these passes through the sorter can take several hours. Once sorted into precincts, those envelopes are sent to the extractors, where the envelope is opened and the folded ballot is removed. The ballots then go to the openers, who unfold them and check them for tears or anything that might prevent it from going through the tabulator. And while this may seem like a simple process, remember that they are having to do this over 169,000 times. The ballots are then batched and put into a press to flatten them so that they can readily go through the tabulator. Batches of ballots are then sent to the count room, where they are tabulated, and after tabulation, some ballots will need to be adjudicated by teams of adjudicators for reasons such as write-in votes or overvotes. Only then can we update our results both locally and with the Secretary of State. The media made a big deal about the fact that about a week after the election, the sorter was down for a period of time while we called a repairman. This equipment has a lot of moving parts. It's got a lot of belts. It even has printers attached to it for printing labels. At times, we are running it for 8 to 10 hours a day, 7 days a week, for several weeks. We continued to process ballots while the sorter was being repaired, including extracting and opening. We even put out an update while the sorter was being repaired. And while it was inconvenient and did interrupt the flow of the work for a time, it was not a major issue, as is shown by the fact that we were able to reach the 97% counted point just a few days later, at the same time as San Bernardino and ahead of both Ventura and Sacramento. Finally, and after completing the process to certify the election to the Secretary of State, we did become aware of the possibility that some eligible ballots may not have been included in the tally. After a thorough investigation, on December 9th, we did determine that 10 eligible ballots were inadvertently omitted from the final tally. We have since petitioned the court to allow us to count these ballots and include them in a supplemental certification. My office has conducted an analysis of the ballots contained in this group. The analysis revealed that there are no contests in which the final result will be altered by the inclusion of these ballots. All contests were decided by margins larger than the outstanding number of ballots to be counted. However, 5 of the ballots did include the 16th Senate District race. Voters have a right to be concerned about an error of this type, and we are reviewing our processes to ensure that it never happens again. We are trying to be as open and transparent as we possibly can while ensuring that every eligible vote is counted. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Ms. Bedard. I'll ask if there's any questions or comments by the board members before I go to the public. Supervisor Couch.
You were reading from something there. It would be a lot easier for me to follow that if I had a copy of that. Can we get that distributed to us while we're still on the item? Do you have multiple copies of that, Ms. Bedard?
No, I don't.
Do we have a copy machine in the building anywhere? We do? I thought we did. Can we ask, I don't know, who's registered to utilize the copier or has been trained on it? Thank you.
Supervisor Peters.
Thank you, Chairman. Few questions. So could you go over, Ms. Bedard, one more time, the issue with the reporting of how many unprocessed ballots there were versus how many actually got counted? I saw at one time there was 38,174, which seems like a pretty precise estimate of ballots, and then over 45,000, which is a significant number higher than that were processed. So would you explain how that happens?
Okay, so again, with these estimates, some of the ballots have been processed, some of them are not. We're still looking actually well into the process. That you're simply looking at envelopes sitting on trays, on shelves, on racks, and you're just trying to estimate what those, how many are in those envelopes, how many of those envelopes there are. So until you actually are getting them processed through the system, you really don't know for certain how many you've got. So, I mean, that is why these are estimates. We're giving out the best estimates we have. I mean, we do the same process that other counties do, and as you can see, it's not precise for anyone. Everyone is just looking at envelopes and trying to determine, get a feel for how many, what's the count of those envelopes. I mean, you don't have time to somehow count. There's no way to count the individual envelopes without actually processing the ballots. And there's so much that goes into processing the ballots. It just, it takes time. So yes, these are the, any differences between, our estimates and, what the actual amounts are simply because we are just trying to eyeball, how many we think are there at that point.
Understood. And my concern is with all the lack of confidence right now in elections, not just in your department, but in elections nationwide. Putting out numbers, like I said, 38,174 seems pretty specific for an estimate, and then to be off by over 13,000 votes, that's pretty significant. And I feel like that does a disservice to elections by creating some concern in the public, and I think that's justifiable. I think the last number that was sent to the Secretary of State that I saw was 700 ballots, and then over 1,900 were counted, which is almost 3 times what our estimate was. And that I find that concerning.
And again, as I mentioned before, a large part of that difference would have been cured ballots. So they were not included in our 720 estimate. but we were getting many cure letters coming in during that time. And so, once those ballots, the signature on those ballots was confirmed and it, was deemed to be a match, then those get added to that original estimated amount.
Okay, and another question I hadn't heard discussed, but I had heard reports of people bringing in ballots well before 5 o'clock when elections are supposed to be open, and getting here and elections was actually closed and they weren't able to turn those in when they brought them down here. Is there any reason that the elections would have been closed before 5 o'clock?
No, I'm not aware. I've not heard anything of that nature. I'm not sure what exactly you're referring to, but no, the elections was open. In fact, generally it was open, well, certainly at least until 5.
Okay, I'm referring to a video by a candidate named David Shepard where he was filming himself come in at about 4:40 to drop off a ballot, and the office was closed and he wasn't able to come in and do that.
Okay, I'm not aware of that. We would have been open.
Okay. The sorting machine that went down, I understand that's a large machine, but it seems like, and again, I don't know, I'm not an elections professional, but for something that critical, we would have extra parts, extra staff. I mean, it fortunately was resolved very quickly by your office, but I mean, from what I hear, it had the potential that it could have been a much bigger deal, could have taken much longer. Is there some best practice that we could be implementing or haven't been implementing, or how do other counties deal with this?
Well, of course, a lot of other counties may well have more space and more resources that they can have, multiple sorters. Obviously, we simply don't have the space, for one thing. But having critical parts on hand, and again, it did not take long for us to get the part in this case, and so that certainly, knowing which parts are most likely to, break down, we can avoid. I think this concern that it could have been much worse is ignoring the fact that there are other processes in place where you can have certain either have it on hand here or have it on hand with a vendor available for us to be able to replace any of these critical parts in a very short time period.
Okay, thank you. One thing you acknowledged was the ballots that were misprinted, and I know you acknowledged that wasn't acceptable, but can you expand on where the breakdown in the process that allowed that to happen? One's a bad enough deal, but the fact that there are multiple is deeply troubling.
Yes, and again, I think it was the sheer volume of measures. It may seem like it would be a simple thing to do, but because of the various systems between the ballot itself and then the sample ballot book, the voter information guide, and all of the way the information comes into us from, these measures are all coming in from, different, schools, different special districts. Some come in as PDFs, some come in as hard copies that then have to be retyped. So that, again, one of the things that we are looking at is standardizing a lot of the way that information comes into us so that we can require all the various agencies to provide it in a certain format that would allow us to be able to process it easier. And so, these are the kinds of things that we're looking at. But that was basically the huge volume of those coming in, and all the what it takes to process them, and the very tight deadlines really that are involved in elections. That between the time they have to present these measures to us, and then we have to get them, formatted and get them into all the various systems so that they can be printed to meet the printing deadlines. They're very short timelines. So that's really where the breakdown was, and that's where we are looking at implementing changes.
Understood. But so we think for the most part the issues were that they were sent to elections in the incorrect format or incorrectly presented before we type them up?
It wasn't that they did not come in incorrect. No, they came in a correct format. oftentimes we actually we can't just cut and paste into, they actually have to be whether retyped or re-entered into between the voter information guide into the ballot system. And so there were errors, and it was on our staff, problems on our side. And so, we acknowledge that. But we're just saying that there are ways that we could change this so that the way that the agencies present the information could make it easier for us then to be able to, get them to the voter information guide and to the ballot, and to ensure that there are no errors on them.
Understood. Thank you. Let me see. The last question I have for right now are the ballots that were uncounted. That is another deeply troubling thing that happened. The fact that even one vote might not get counted is alarming. And the fact that 10 of those and 5 of them were in an extremely tight race, it just further erodes the confidence in elections for the public, and I don't blame them there. So where do you see the breakdown in that process? Was there just the controls weren't being followed? Were there standard operating procedures that were overlooked, or was it something else entirely? Could you just elaborate on that a little bit?
Largely, yes, there should have been a thorough review of the entire vote by mail area to ensure that some of these ballots, in particular, if they were set aside because there was a question about them, that they always were brought back. If they were deemed eligible, that they were brought back and ultimately processed. So yes, there was, I would say that, examination of every area of the vote by mail area to make sure that, everything that was being included. I would say that that was the step that was omitted, and that is obviously the area that we're looking at to shore up, specific procedures in place to make sure that that would never happen again.
Great, thank you. And actually, one more question for you. Is there any resources or anything that your office needs to increase your efficiencies or the procedures that this board can provide and hasn't, or you would like to, looking back on this past election, that we can do to help the elections department out, because it's tantamount to getting voter confidence increased in our elections. That's absolutely critical. So anything we can do, I think the board would be willing to do that. As I say, as far as equipment goes, our biggest drawback right now is simply space. We actually still do have some state grant funds available. It does require a county match, but there are funds available. So, there is a possibility that we could get some, additional equipment. But as I say, our biggest problem at this point, I would say, is space. As far as anything going forward, probably the best thing to do would be to talk to the auditor controller elect Amy Espinoza on her plans for what she would want in particular as far as additional resources. But yes, at this point we're very short on staffing. I mean, we've always been short on staffing, and it is a difficult job. It's hard to keep people in that job. It's stressful during the election time. So as far as personnel, is a consideration, but then also just space and equipment. Those would be the main things. Okay, thank you. Chairman, that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Couch.
Thank you, Ms. Bedard. I know that you have a very difficult job, and I know that state law has, I think, changed almost every election for the past, well, I don't know, few at least. So you have to learn all those new laws, and your staff or your volunteers or whoever's doing all the counting and sorting and everything has to become familiar with those new regulations as well. I can't see you because the poinsettia is in the way. That's why, for the people at home, that's why I keep having to do this. But I have two questions that I don't, probably have more, but I'm going to ask you two. the number that Supervisor Peters mentions, the 38,174. The process that you just described of coming up with an estimate of number of ballots uncounted leads me to believe that that number ought to be, it ought to end in 2 zeros, maybe 3. So explain to me how we get 174 on the end of that number. Who did that?
Well, basically what you're doing, excuse me, what you're doing with these is you have an exact number of things that you know you've run through. You have a count, and then so you know that number, and then you're estimating the ones that have not begun the process yet. And so I mean, yes, there are some counties that do just round it. We've got 50,000, we've got 100,000, and that might be obviously a wiser way to go, so that it doesn't lead people to think that we know precisely how much there is. But just as far as how we arrived at that precise number, that is, you take a very precise number and then you add a rounded number, 20,000 or whatever to it.
So you're not estimating, I thought you were only estimating the number of votes that were yet to be counted.
That's correct, but we have begun processing some of them. We won't necessarily
you had a number.
So we have a number of, say, how many signatures we have already confirmed, yes.
So I think what your comment just a moment ago, that maybe the policy ought to be that we round it off to the closest 100, because in my opinion, the information that you're giving to the public, we have to view it as how are they going to perceive it. And when it's right down to a number like 174 on the end, they think you know exactly how many there are left. So additionally, I know this is not necessarily it's part of the election process, but this is really prior to the ballots going out. You mentioned it, there were mistakes made in the printing, and I know a couple of districts in Tehachapi had wording changed. Measure K had some wording that wasn't what was submitted, was printed on a ballot. And I'm not asking you, tell me a name. I just want to make sure that you have run down exactly where the problem is. Whoever was responsible, you know who that is in your department. Is that accurate? Because I'd heard that you didn't know at one time.
No, we have investigated what happened there, and we do know what happened there, and that's why we actually are already putting into place changes to the process.
All right. Thank you very much for that. That's it, Mr. Chairman, for me.
Thank you, Supervisor Couch. Any other questions from supervisors before I go to the public? Okay. I'll now open this up to members of the public who'd like to comment on item number 11.
Thank you, Chairman Scrivener, Board of Supervisors. My name is Vince Mayoko. Supervisor Peters, who's no longer here, he must have stepped out. Supervisor Couch, you helped answer some of my quick questions and concerns I have that I brought up last week regarding some of the estimate numbers, so thank you for pursuing that. You should also have a letter that I just put together that Clerk Kraus is actually passing out right now. So I've got some items here I think that need to be addressed currently and looking forward. Number one, how many ballots were dropped off at each individual drop box throughout Kern County? How many ballots were dropped off on election day at polling sites? How many ballots arrived by mail to the election office after election day? How many undeliverable ballots came back to the elections office, and how does this compare to previous elections? The signature verification process. Did the new software that Mrs. Bedard was touting several months ago, did that actually speed up the counting process and make the signature verification process more accurate? How about the curing of ballots? How does that process work, and how many ballots actually got cured during this election season? We already addressed earlier today about my concerns about the Dominion voting system. I don't think I need to elaborate more on that. The one thing that I have been explaining and tried to make an important issue going forward is ultimately the decoupling of the election office from the clerk, auditor, controller position. Once again, thank you so much for your time and efforts on this matter.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Carol Bender again. I just had a couple of comments, especially since I saw that my email was in the paper regarding my research that I did on this. And I will say that I called the governor's office, the Secretary of State, and the Bedard's office several times during the election so that I could understand the ridiculous laws that our state has on election and how difficult it must be for the elections department to do what they need to do. These 10 ballots, and then this morning in the paper we have 10 missing ballots or show up, just to create more conspiracy theory thinking around elections. It just is very divisive, I think. I spoke with one of Ms. Bedard's staff members after the election because I was trying to understand when there was concern about recount and these late ballots that are arriving with ballot harvesting laws, the way that they're so fluid. And they said that they got about 50 ballots on the very last day still, because the state law says that you have until 5 p.m. 2 days before certification to get your ballot in, even though you've had over a month. All of us, people are out scurrying around, calling people, I guess, trying to find out if they've gotten verification that their ballot's been counted. If not, can we come pick it up? I'm not exactly sure how far people go, but you can go so far as to going in person to their home. So I think it's reasonable that possibly those 10 that were omitted were from that very last day. The only other question that I had was, it would be interesting to know how many ballots are cured, need to be cured out of this election. If 97% of the ballots were counted within a couple of weeks of the election, just doing simple math, that leaves the 3%, which is 5,721 ballots that would need to be cured. So we could be waiting up until 2 days prior to certification for 5,720 ballots to show up and be counted, and we could be off by that many votes in each of these election situations, whether it be supervisor, proposition, whatever. So that would be interesting to know. Why are so many people uneducated about how to fill out a ballot? Maybe we need some education on that, as well as more personnel. For that many ballots to have to be counted, with only 22,000-ish going to the polls nowadays, we need a heck of a lot more people to man the election office. One of the people told me it was 24 hours a day and everybody was really burned out. Appreciate their honesty. You got to ask. You got to do your own research. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good morning, Leilani Tedeschi. Philip Peters asked what additional resources Ms. Bedard may need. When she mentioned space, that's not necessary. I've spent hundreds of hours observing. They have plenty of space. What they need is leadership, competence, management. Okay? The process is back there. If you spent the amount of time that I spent there, it's discouraging, it's disgusting what's happening to our elections. Ms. Bedard, Amy Espinoza, Laura Cantu are not back there. Fractions of a time. So it's not space or more equipment. They have so much equipment that's not even being used. And I don't want any more taxpayer dollars wasted. With regards to the mistakes, there's mistakes with regards to our ballots and the sample ballots every single time. How about if we have where the department head's salary is reduced when there are mistakes? I'd like to know how many reviews are conducted before the final ballot is sent to the third-party vendor to print them. I doubt that there might be adequate reviews, and that's a simple process to implement. I believe the entire election division needs to have a step-by-step analysis of the processes, because there can be drastic improvements that can be made. The cured ballots, when a signature is disallowed, it could take days before a letter is sent out to the voter to cure it. So when signatures are disallowed just days before the certification deadline, that voter never has an opportunity to cure it within an adequate, within the expiration time frame. That's concerning. They have untrained people reviewing the signatures. I witnessed signatures that were a match being disallowed late in the process, so that voter never had an opportunity to cure. That ballot was never cast. That voter was disenfranchised. With regards to the 10 missing ballots, I'd like to have an affidavit signed. I'd like to know who found them, where were they found, chain of custody, how were they submitted? Were they by mail? Were they hand-delivered? Ballot drop box? How do we know that there are not hundreds of others sitting elsewhere in that room? If you've toured that room, there's chaos back there. I've seen fresh, clean ballots, unmarked, that are extras, sitting on a table, unattended, for 4 days straight. They sat there. Anyone could swing by, pick them up, fill them in. There's no chain of custody there.
Ms. Tedeschi, your time has expired. If you could please wrap up your comments.
Okay, I believe there was a lot of smoke and mirrors during her presentation. If I could have a copy of that, I could likely shoot a lot of holes into it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hey, Paul Infesti once again. I want to give a thanks and to Mary Bedard for her years of service, and I think she is doing as good a job as she can under the circumstances with resources. Sometimes today we have a lot of differences in who we can hire on temporary basis, which is what they're working with, and I think they're doing a pretty good job considering. They did get all but very few ballots finished by the actual deadline that the state gives. And I also was looking up the records to see where other counties were turning in their final reports, and we weren't that bad off from what the other counties did. I know it's a very difficult situation. There's a high pressure to make sure you get things done right, especially when you're dealing with elections. And I think with all the bottlenecks and things that you have, it happens. I came here first because I did have a comment in this past year about a mistake that was made, but Mary Bedard actually personally sent me an email thanking me for bringing something to their attention, and they took care of it pretty quickly after it was shown. Mistakes do happen, but that department, just from what the example I gave, show that they really do work to try and rectify the things that happen. So I guess that's where I am, that the department is working with the resources they have and with the instructions they have from the state. So I just want to say that I think all in all, they did a really good job under the circumstances they have to work with. And I thank Mary Bedard and her staff for being able to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good morning again. Duetta Riley, D-U-E-T-T-A, Riley, R-E-I-L-L-Y. I want to say again, audit. Absolute audit. If you knew what I saw, and I saw it, I was there. I did not see you. You may have been there, but I did not see you. I was there. The only part of this we even get to see, they put us behind a glass, and these computers are where they're comparing signatures. Numerous ballots, they are upside down. The signatures are upside down compared to what we're matching to. And I thought, what I went and got a supervisor. I said, these ballot signatures are upside down and they're trying to compare to right side up and they're saying they match. I said, maybe they got a great reading skill that I don't have, but I don't read upside down well. I could agree that if it's got a long tail or a certain, but you can't, some of these don't have that distinguishing of a, let's judge it just on that little tail detail and call it a match. Are you kidding me? She explained to me that a batch, how many is that, went through the scanner upside down and they couldn't fix that, so they had to read them all upside down? Audit. Audit. I am not accepting this count. I am not accepting these results. I don't understand how you guys came to certify on a Friday instead of a meeting where we kind of knew to watch what you're doing. But you've already certified this election, is my understanding. Unacceptable. Did anyone tell you about the upside down signature reading? Did you know that? You know it now. I was also present at the primary late at night, between 12 and 1 a.m. Everything had quieted down. There's no more ballots coming in. And then there were huge amounts of these black bags being carried in. I saw, sitting behind my little window, I saw these bags opened and none of those envelopes had a mark on the back, which means no date, no name, no signature. No, my husband dropped it off, so you do that whole part too. Not a mark on the back of the envelope, right? I go, okay, give me my little note. I gotta write a note to the supervisor, get somebody over here. I get Mary Bedard. She did not come to me. I give my little note to Miss Sophia. The next thing I know, they have shut down this office. Shut it down. Everybody go home.
Ms. Riley, your time is expired.
Okay, I
If you
just
could
want to
please wrap it up.
say, I did, on my way out, there was Miss Bedard, and I told her then what I saw, and she said, we will look into that. But it was over. She never got back to me. I don't know what happened. I have a lot of questions, and Q sent me here today, and by God, the military knows you guys are cheating on these elections, and I know it too.
Thank you for your comments. Who'll be next, please? Okay.
Good morning. Ron Barger. I've spoke on the machines a couple of times in the past. I've asked you to look into, a few times there was some information out and nobody looked at it the next time I came in and spoke to you. But Americans are looking at our elections now more of selection instead of an election. Okay? And for some reason, we have to use these Dominion machines and the other 4 that are out there, and they're all manufactured in China, and the only ones that can work on these machines, do the maintenance, are the company. So we're allowing our enemy to run our election. Does that make any sense?
Please hold your applause. Thank you.
No, seriously, does that make any sense? We're letting our enemies run our election. So what we need to do is go back to where we were before this, was to paper ballots in our precincts with a signature, and it can be done in one night. We're doing it in America, but nobody's listening. France does it in one night. They have 36 million votes to tabulate, and they do paper ballot, and they do the signature. Now, we're Kern County. We have 165,000 votes. Why can't we get back? And I guarantee it's not going to cost us $262,000 a year so that China can come over and take care of our machines. This is simple. This is very simple. It's a solution. I don't know if the state want to allow it, but if they will, we should be the first county to jump in there and take control. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other speakers, please? Okay, seeing none, then I'll return to the board. Supervisor Peters.
Thank you, Chairman. I would like to ask our county counsel, Ms. Rezon, to discuss the referral that I made at the last meeting regarding what the board can do to help the elections department and what options are available to us. If you could just give us a little update on that info.
Of course, Supervisor Peters through the chair. So we've researched some of the things that you can do directly related to the position or the office of auditor, controller, county clerk, as well as your obligations and duty as a board with the authority you have for all county officers, whether they be elected or appointed. And I'd like to start with that. So the Board of Supervisors is required to supervise the official conduct of all county officers, whether they be elected or appointed. You are required to see that county officers faithfully perform their duties. However, your board does not have the power to perform a county officer's statutory duties for them or direct the manner in which such duties are performed. Your board may employ experts to obtain information necessary to discharge your duty to supervise county officers. So as such, a consultant may be retained to gather information and provide recommendations to assist you with your duties to supervise county officers, including the auditor, controller, county clerk. And in Kern County, as we know, the county clerk's office serves as the register of voters. And there were a number of alternatives to Kern County's existing structure whereby the register of voters is a position held by the elected auditor, controller, county clerk. So one way that you could change that structure is to seek state legislation which would allow the position of the register of voters to be a separate, standalone, appointed position. If your board wishes to appoint the register of voters, it would require the passage of a Senate or Assembly bill with a legislative finding and declaration that there is a necessity for such in the county of Kern. Our research indicates that there are only 13 counties that have this, but in those 13 counties, the Board of Supervisors is authorized to appoint the Register of Voters to discharge all the duties vested by law in the county elections official. Another alternative, just to change the structure of the existing office, would be to separate the office of the county clerk from the auditor controller, but keep both of those as elected positions. This was how those offices existed until 1994, when by an ordinance, the then Board of Supervisors consolidated the office of the county clerk with the auditor controller. In order to separate those offices, now you would need to pass an ordinance. Somebody used the word decoupling. So you would need to pass an ordinance which would exactly do that, that would decouple them. Under that scenario, the county clerk remains the register of voters, but would be a separate standalone elected position. Another option before your board, if you were so inclined, is you could make the register of voters and the county clerk an appointed position, but that would require a ballot proposition. So at some future election, your board could direct that a ballot measure be placed on the ballot, and the question would be whether the position of county clerk should be an appointed position. The county clerk would then continue to serve as the register of voters. So to just briefly recap, you could request that there be a statute enacted which would separate the Register of Voters office from the county clerk. You could separate the Office of Auditor Controller from the Office of County Clerk by ordinance, and this would keep the Register of Voter duties within the elected Office of County Clerk. You could change the county clerk and by extension the Register of Voters to an appointed position through a ballot measure. Should your board be interested in any of these options, the changes would not become effective until the position is next on the ballot, which in 2026, or if there were to be a vacancy in the office, changes could be considered at that time. However, as a number of the options would take time to implement, your board could consider beginning one or more of the processes outlined in this letter. In the immediate future, and to address any existing concerns, your board may hire an expert to assist with your duty to supervise county officers. That completes my report.
Thank you very much. Lastly, I would like to say thank you to Ms. Bedard for coming down and sharing some of this information, and Ms. Razan for putting this report together. And thank you to the public for coming down and sharing your thoughts. And personally, I'm going to look into this and think through some of the stuff that we've heard here today. I think that would be appropriate before I make any recommendations. So thank you, Chairman. That's
Thank you, Supervisor Peters. Any other comments? Supervisor Maggard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple questions that are specific to the Bear Valley ballot, but I don't want to step in front of you. Would you like to ask any questions about that before I ask a question?
I did have some questions to ask about Bear Valley.
I'm happy to defer to you.
So, well, how about if I tee it up and then maybe then we'll roll to you on the subject. Thank you, Supervisor Maggard. I mean, since Bear Valley Springs, it is in my district, so I did get an earful on the situation there. So essentially, Bear Valley Springs, for the public that isn't aware, it's a community services district, which is somewhat similar to a city, at least in the way Bear Valley functions, as it has its own police force, does road maintenance, has sewer service, in addition to some other services. And so specifically for this election, November 2022, Bear Valley had two measures, Measure V as in Victor, and Measure W that were on the ballot. Measure V dealt with a parcel tax to pay for enhancements to their entry gate system for the ingress and egress into Bear Valley. There's one way in, one way out, and it has a security gate. And then another parcel tax, Measure W, which was going to increase funding to the police department. These required a 2/3 vote for approval, as they were specific in their objectives. And what had occurred is that somehow the word minimum and maximum were switched. So in other words, if the ballot was supposed to say, you vote for this, there'll be a maximum assessment of $75, that was changed to minimum. And so that would mean it was an open-ended. It would be a minimum of 75, and the voter wouldn't have any idea of how much higher that would go, versus maximum, where you knew that the amount you would pay would be no more than the $75 or whichever it was for the respective measures. And so from what I understand, the district has requested an investigation as to how the word maximum was replaced with minimum. And so, Ms. Bedard, can you tell us whatever you know as far as how that error occurred, and if I have explained it accurately? I hope I have. I don't live in Bear Valley, but that's what I was able to glean from media reports and other information that I received from some of the officials. And then what, if anything, is being done to determine how that happened and what recourse the district may have, because those two measures did not pass. One other situation in the Tehachapi area had to do with Measure X, which was a measure put on the ballot by the Tehachapi Valley Healthcare District. That measure asked to extend the 30-year lease that Adventist Health has with the Tehachapi Valley Healthcare District, but somehow the word bonds was included in the ballot measure language, and so folks were confused, thinking, okay, are we voting on bonds here, and how much are the bonds going to cost, et cetera. And so my understanding is that word should not have been included. Now, with that particular measure, there was a lot of outreach. One letter was sent to all the voters by the hospital, and another letter was sent out by Kern County Elections, and I received both of those at my house explaining the inclusion and the error. That one passed, and it passed quite handily, actually, whereas the other two that I mentioned with Bear Valley Springs both lost, and those needed a 2/3 vote. So, Ms. Bedard, thank you for your time and attention to this, and if you could help us to understand what happened and what may happen moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In both cases, again, where they had to, we did investigate, we did see, what had happened in that process. They did have to be retyped, and again, that it was, I can't explain, when someone is trying to retype that you would change from maximum to minimum, but it was just apparently just an error in the first the retyping and then in the proofing, and as well as on where the other one was marked as a bond. But we did, as I say, we did conduct an investigation for Bear Valley, well, for both really, on how it occurred. But again, it was more in just that translating the information over into the systems that we have to use from what was presented with from the districts to the systems that we have to use. Now, in both cases, we did send letters out to all voters at Bear Valley as well as the Tehachapi Valley Healthcare. We also emailed anyone we had email addresses, any voters we had email addresses for, we also emailed those letters out. We did ask voters if they had concerns, questions, to contact us. I can say that in Bear Valley, my understanding is we only had 4 voters that did contact us, and we did provide them with information if they contacted us, if they had already voted, and if this would have changed their vote. Because with Bear Valley, we had not started actually counting any votes at that point. So we did, tell voters that if they had voted, if they sent their ballot in or had filled out their ballot but not having sent it in, that to contact us. We could send them a replacement ballot. We could void that original ballot and send them a replacement ballot so that that original ballot would have been spoiled. We did provide these 4 voters with that information. None of them, in the end, had indicated for sure that they had actually did want to change their vote, and none of them requested a replacement ballot. So in no case did we actually spoil any of those ballots. That no one indicated to us that they had actually would have changed their vote had they known that.
So when you spoke of typing in and replacing the word maximum with minimum, so that was done by a member of your staff. They were given the ballot measure language as proposed from the Community Service District, and then they were retyped into the system by one of your staff?
Yes, that's correct.
Once they do that, is there someone in a supervisory role that then looks at that work to determine whether or not it was typed in correctly?
Yes, there is proofing that is done that is supposed to be done, and yes, so there were multiple failures in the process, both in the actual translation over into the system and in the proofing level that was done by our staff. But yes, there is supposed to be proofing on everything, and that, again, that's something that we are looking at, where that breakdown was, why that, whether they they did not actually proof back to the actual board resolution that they were working from.
When you say multiple failures, how many levels of scrutiny does that normally receive from when it's typed into the system and then someone or multiple people look at it to ensure that the language is accurate?
There would normally be, I mean, the initial copying over, and then generally at least 2 levels on the proofing, and therefore that is why we really are concerned about how that failure happened, because there are multiple levels that are supposed to be checking.
So the 2 levels of proofing did occur, and
Yes.
it was missed by both?
And was still missed by both, yes.
Okay. With a specific example of, the specific situation with Bear Valley and their 2 measures, obviously a 2/3 vote is a difficult threshold. However, I think you could reasonably assume that the error in the ballot language could have dissuaded a number of people from voting. If you're voting for a maximum, then you know, okay, it can only go up to this much. But if it's a minimum, it's open-ended as far as how much the assessment could be. And so that can make a big difference in how someone would vote on any kind of a parcel tax measure. And so at this point, are you aware of what Bear Valley Springs' plans are? Are they looking to try again with accurate ballot language, a special election, or are they looking at 2024? Do we have any idea?
I am not aware of what their plans are, no.
Are there any plans to meet with them in the near future to discuss it?
We have had, various, we've had conference calls, during the election. We have had emails back and forth, both, our office and with county council, with Bear Valley. So, I mean, we have had discussions, ongoing discussions, but they have not indicated, at least is that I'm aware of, that they have what their plans may be for the future.
Okay. I guess this is a question for council. To what extent does the county have liability for mistakes such as this? If the Bear Valley Springs CSD said, hey, our election's been compromised because of the ballot language error, we want to redo, we want a special election, and we don't want to pay for it. What recourse would they have?
Chairman Scrivener, I'm not completely certain, but our initial research shows that the county would pay for the special election.
Thank you. Supervisor Maggard, those are all my questions for now, and thank you for deferring to me on that.
Thank you,
Please
Mr.
proceed.
Chairman. My primary concern is that our election process be accurate. My next concern in priority is that the public have confidence in the results. We are witnessing across our country an unprecedented diminishing of confidence. And it's vital, in my opinion, that we do everything we can to move that back in that direction here locally. We don't control what happens other places. We being the members of this board, have limited control over what happens in this department. But I urge the department to do everything in its power to try to not only assure accuracy, but rebuild that confidence. I am a numbers person. As election results come in, I spend election evening and the days that follow doing a number of regression analyses of how the votes have been tabulated, in what districts they occur. It's a process I've developed over the years to try to predict how subsequent results will be, if there's 10,000 votes available, how many are in Measure K's question, how many are going to be in the governor's race, and how many are going to be in, for example, a district race. So I've done this many times over the years, and one of the things I always try to figure out is how likely is it, what percentage of the majority of the votes would a candidate or a proposition need to overcome the deficit it has to change the results. I did that this year, as I have many years, in watching voting results come in. As I did that this year, I didn't anticipate that we would be sitting here today, and that I should have kept all my notes and each iteration of the numbers as they came in. But I recollect very clearly that Supervisor Peters and Ms. Bedard, you have answered some questions he had about this, so I won't belabor this, but he asked questions about whether, why would it be that the number of estimated ballots left to be counted would differ from the amount of votes that were reflected. I used the governor's race as the kind of control to try to see if the number of votes cast in the governor's race were in the ballpark of how many votes were left to be counted. And not only did I notice that there were times when the number of votes that were tabulated from one iteration of the tabulations to the next as the votes were counted, not only did sometimes the number of votes that were reflected in the new counts exceed the number of estimated ballots left to count, but there were other times that there were vast differences. I remember in two iterations in particular in the governor's race when it was not possible that the number of votes that were supposedly left to be counted could have made up the number of votes in the governor's race, and nor there was another time that the number of votes that were reflected in the media, at least, as being counted. I know that Supervisor Peters has said before that he saw these estimates on the website, so I think they might have come from your office, but I'm not certain of that. But there were other times when the number of votes that were cast were vastly greater than the number of votes reflected in the count were vastly greater than the number of ballots that were estimated. It went both directions. That causes an erosion of confidence, and that concerns me. The issue of the misstatement of the language causes an erosion of confidence. A CPA firm, I'm a CPA by trade, and I'll be a CPA after I'm done with public life. In the CPA world, tax returns are very precious information. Some of it cannot be replaced. The integrity of the information is vital. So there's a very prescribed, specific process by which information is brought into an office, and the hands, every set of hands that it crosses during the process until that return is completed and goes back out the door and is delivered back to the hands of the client. Each step in that process is signed off by the people that were involved, and it's not a formal chain of custody, as somebody alluded to earlier, but it clearly indicates these are the hands that touch this information. And if something is missing, if something is wrong, it points you back directly. Where was that information lost, or where could there have been a mistake made? I don't know the process that you followed, but I am interested in what that process is. So you said that there were, first of all, with regard to these counts, you said that there were recovering processes to see and assure that this never happens again. What are the changes that you are suggesting occur so that this never happens again?
Are you referring to the ballots that we have, the 10 ballots? Is that what
well, I'd like to first deal with the issue of the number of ballots left to be counted versus how many ended up being tabulated. Then I'd like to talk about how it affects the language that went on the ballot. And then thirdly, I'd like to talk about the ballots that were discovered after the fact.
Well, as far as the estimates, at this point, given the resources we have, the equipment we have, I mean, the estimates are just estimates. I mean, we are doing our best looking at racks and racks and racks of envelopes that have come in that we have not yet processed. We're doing our best to try to eyeball and see what we think, how many we think can fit on a shelf, and how many shelves are there on each rack, and that way. But I don't know, and as I say, other counties are in the same situation, is that we're putting out estimates based on, just, trying to simply look at racks full of envelopes. There, until you begin processing them, there really is no good way to count them, to be able to come up with an estimate. So that part of it, unless there's some other equipment out there that I'm not aware of, that, that you could count those things. But I mean, you're getting tubs of ballots coming in from the post office. You're getting, we know how many, we do count as they come in from the drop boxes. So we do have, certain counts on things like that. But as far as the mail, which is the vast majority of it, there really isn't a good way right now. And as I say, you can see that throughout the county. So I don't know that any county has, they may have people better at estimating, looking at racks full of envelopes. But beyond that, I'm not aware of a good way to do the estimates as far as, how many are left. Now, again, as far as, moving on to the language in on the ballots, that I would say we were simply unprepared for the sheer volume. 17 may not sound like a lot of measures, but with all the work you have to do on them and with the limited staff that we have, it just overwhelmed us when we've been used to just having 2 or 3 or most 4 measures in any given election. So trying to deal with that 17 did just swamp the processes we had in place, and so the controls we had in place. And that's where we're looking to really shore that up, make sure that regardless of the number of measures that come through in the future, that we have processes in place.
So what is the process specifically on how a ballot measure is typed onto the ballot?
Well, okay, so the measures themselves, they do come in in various ways. And sometimes you get multiple, emailing them, and you get multiple copies. So then you got to make sure that of a resolution, you've got to make sure that resolution, is this the same resolution that I'm getting multiple copies of, or are these different resolutions? If you look at the resolutions themselves, and we may probably don't have any control over this, but some agencies will put the ballot language in the just as in the middle, just as a paragraph in the middle of it. A lot of them will put it as an appendix so that it's very clear what the language needs to be. Otherwise, you're really reading through the whole resolution itself, trying to locate what the language that they want on the ballot. So again, that may be something where we can work with the agencies to see if they would be willing to sort of standardize, how they put it in their resolutions, so that we can, clearly find, what the language needs to be on the ballot. So, and then, as I say, making sure that it comes in a certain, way, not, whether that's through email or that they send it to us, in a certain, format, whether as opposed to, again, getting hard copies that, versus everything else. So, I mean, that's one of the ways to try to make sure that, that the information that comes to us is in a format that makes it clear to us what we're looking for and what we need to include.
I believe a moment ago you said there were 2 levels of proofing after the information had been input into the form it would be on the ballot. Are those 2 people at the same time? Are they 2 different levels of how does that work?
Well, normally you would have, actually, in any kind of proofing situation, you would have 2 people one reading it and one one also checking it. I mean, so that it is just 2 people. But when I say 2 levels, I actually mean 2 separate steps of proofing. So it should have been proofed twice before.
So, I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry.
But yeah, the process is, and there were 2 levels of proofing, and again, somehow both of them failed, and that's what we have been looking at to see, how did they miss that?
So is it 2 proofers at 2 different times?
Yes.
So a total of 4 people
Total
proof
of
it?
4 people.
Okay. Yeah, that's the way we had to prove important documents being done. It was done by multiple people. Okay, and with regard
Supervisor
to...
Maggard, hold on just a second.
Yes?
I keep hearing some comments from the back, and I'm going to ask that those comments stop. The period of time for public comment is closed. This is now the board's time to discuss with Ms. Bedard and anyone else that we may choose to ask questions of. So I'm going to ask that you stop making comments from the back. Thank you. Supervisor Maggard, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With regard to the 10 ballots that were discovered after we had certified the election, what is the process for assuring that all ballots are secured and that security is maintained up to the point at which you have certified that they've all been counted? And then what is how were they discovered? So first, can you tell me what's the process by which we secure the ballots to make sure that all that we have are counted?
Okay, so once, and we're talking here vote by mail ballots, so once they come into our office, whether that's through the mail, whether that's through drop boxes being brought in, they are taken into the vote by mail room. So they are secure from at the time they arrive at our office. That is a security controlled, security badge controlled area. There's a security system on it. 2 people have to be in the vote by mail area at all times. You can never have just one person going into the vote by mail area. So anytime during the election process, 2 people must be in there. There are security cameras on it. And those vote by mail ballots, so the envelopes, when they come in, they go into that room, they stay in that room, they don't leave that room. So, I mean, that's the main security. What I would say with these were that they were, so they went through the process, and so, whether that's the first, through the sorter to be scanned, the signature checking, so they were going through the process. And at a certain point, a question was raised, and so they were set aside, and that should have gone on up to a supervisor. They were either set aside on a shelf or on some of them were questions that had been put on a desk, set aside, and so. These particular ones, at the end of the process, again, they should have been certainly a thorough review to make sure that there wasn't something, that had been, set aside on a shelf, for further review that, wasn't processed. That would be the normal process to go through and make sure everything has been processed. And again, some of these, there were these that had been just set aside, put on a shelf, and then overlooked, basically, when we did the final processing of the ballots over to the count room.
The process for the language being input and reviewed and the process for the assurance that all ballots have been counted, do those lend themselves to eventually your signing off that that process was completed?
That would be one thing we would want to look at, is that as it's been a process where the supervisor over that section would have a responsibility for that, but certainly in the future to actually have a formal process, and whether that's the registrar of voters or having someone in a management position to actually say do the final review. That's certainly something that is being looked at as well to make sure, and again, as you're suggesting, perhaps actually signing off that they have, that this actually has been done, that the final review has been done. That's certainly something we're looking at.
Thank you. Unfortunately, I think we're kind of in a perfect storm of multiple failures, to use the words that Ms. Bedard used a moment ago in some of the controls in the office, along with an unprecedented amount of public scrutiny, cynicism, complaints. What my goal is accuracy and then confidence. So, Ms. Razan, is it within, you read a little bit about what our authority is it within our authority as the Board of Supervisors to initiate a review of the process of how the votes are collected, tabulated, and processed? Is that within our view, or is that only within the purview of the auditor, controller, clerk, registrar of voters.
Supervisor Maggard, through the chair, I think that gets right into the gray area. You are unable to direct how Ms. Bedard in her position does something if, for instance, there is a state mandated process of how things go through the system, and I don't know whether there are or not. If there's not, if you are more interested in having a review of making sure that all the efficiencies and safeguards are in place, you could conduct that sort of review.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Bedard is a person in whom I have never questioned her integrity or her character. I do not believe, nor have I ever believed, that she has intentionally attempted to manipulate or disserve the process and the vital part of our democracy about voting being held up at the with the priority that it is. So I've never questioned that about you, Ms. Bedard, and I don't question it now. As there is a changing of the guard to a new person that's responsible for our elections, it just as when there's a changing of a guard in ownership or in the controller of a business, it is a very common thing to start anew with the new administration or the new person in charge of all of this, to start with a review of where we were and where we are now. And if changes need to be made, they are initiated at the outset. Because at the end of the day, Ms. Espinoza, I believe, will have these responsibilities for many years to come. And I wish her every success. And even more than that, I wish for the public to have confidence in the results that come forth from there. So whether this will not happen on my watch, but I would urge this board to think about working with Ms. Espinoza or on its own, anticipate how it might do some process review, some process analysis of what exactly needs to change in the way things are input and words are reviewed, and the custody of documents to make sure that they are all accounted for. Enough said about that. I urge my colleagues to think about how they might go about doing that in the future. That will not happen on my watch. So thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate the opportunity to comment.
Thank you, Supervisor Maggard. I wanted to ask our CAO, Ryan Alsop, for a couple of things. First, we did receive a letter dated today from Vince Mayoko that had several questions on there. It's addressed to the Board of Supervisors. I know that we aren't going to be able to answer these questions because they're specific to the Elections Department without the help from Ms. Bedard or from Ms. Espinoza when she takes the reins of that department. But I do want to ask our County Administrative Officer, Ryan Alsop, to ensure that these questions get answered, that the board is copied on the response, and that Mr. Mayoko does receive a response to the questions that he submitted. One other thing that I want to offer to the board, I do know that Mr. Alsop has had conversations with Amy Espinoza, who will be taking over this department. I'm not sure exactly what her official start date is. I'm guessing it's somewhere perhaps around January 6th or so. But Ms. Bedard, you probably know exactly.
January 2nd.
January 2nd, okay, thank you. So the day after New Year's. So at that point, this will be her department to run. And I think that will, after that point, when she does take over, will be, I think, the next best opportunity for this board to understand what her plans are to address some of the concerns that have been expressed not only today, but over the series of several months, starting with, I think, the 2020 election, which is, in my view, when things started to get much more difficult with all the mail ballots, et cetera. But Mr. Alsop, do you have something that you can share with us as far as any conversations that you've had, any plans that Ms. Espinoza may have in regards to the elections office specifically, that you might be able to discuss to some extent, and what your thoughts are on where we go from here with subsequent conversations. We do have another item that we need to consider that was pulled off of consent that has to do with the Dominion voting system, which is obviously related to this subject, and I do want to get into that as soon as we can because we have items to consider in closed session. Mr. Alsop.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it, and I appreciate what you're saying about this next agenda item, so I'm going to be quick. We'll look, yes, we're talking with Ms. Espinoza. She is the incoming, will be the chief elections official as the independently elected auditor controller of this county when she resumes or assumes office in January, and we're looking forward to working with her directly. She'll be in charge, and I think that it would be appropriate for the board to allow her to actually be in the seat and to hear from her. I think that she's interested in doing some things that I believe you'll have interest in, as well as the public. And I think that we need to allow her to assume her position and appear before your board and have those conversations. And we will be supportive of her.
Timeline-wise, do you have any thoughts, or has she indicated when on our calendar for the next calendar year, the 2023 calendar year, where we would have her to give a report to the board on what plans she may have to dig deeper into these issues that we've been discussing?
I don't have a specific date, but I think that she's very much looking forward to assuming the position and getting in front of your board at the earliest possible time. And I wouldn't be surprised if that was at some point in January.
Okay, well, I would like to ask you to follow up with her and then try to get this board some indication on when we could expect that. Are there any other questions or comments from the board members for Ms. Bedard on item number 11? Otherwise, I think we should have a motion to receive and file on this presentation.
Motion.
I'll second that, Chairman, and to Mary Bedard, thank you so much for your service and all your class in doing what you do. It's appreciated, and I really wish you the best. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved. All ayes.
Thank you. And next is item 12, as I just alluded to. This is proposed amendment number 4 to agreement 101-2016 with Dominion Voting Systems, Inc. to extend the term of agreement 1 year from December 31, 2022 to December 31, 2023 at a total cost of $224,316. Ms. Bedard, please proceed on this item. Thank you.
Okay, the item before you is an amendment to the agreement with Dominion Voting Systems for the payment of warranty and license fees for 2023, which will allow us to both maintain and use the equipment for any special elections held during 2023. The initial contract with Dominion called for the prepayment of license and warranty for 5 years. Since the end of the 5-year period, we are paying these fees on a year-to-year basis. Therefore, it's recommended your board approve the extension of the term of the agreement through 2023. That concludes my remarks.
Thank you. Do we have any comments or questions from the board before I go to the public? Okay, seeing none, I'll ask if there's any members of the public that would like to make comment on item 12. I know we had a few speakers that spoke to it when we were considering the consent agenda. I don't know that all of them are here, but some are. Madam Clerk, if you could set the clock for 2 minutes, please. And I know we've heard from you once, but we'd ask if you could please state your name again. Thank you.
Yes, again, Duetta Riley, D-U-E-T-T-A, Riley, R-E-I-L-L-Y. The Dominion machines have got to go. We talked to you about this going into these elections recently that Ms. Bedard surprised you with an outstanding payment that was like due immediately. Well, I don't know what that money went for, because here we are again, and now you want a whole year's worth of money for it again. You guys work for us. It's we the people, and this is not working. You can vote any way you want. It's not gonna matter. The military's in on the whole gig. It's been captured in lifetime. Dominion machines have been captured in lifetime. I would step out if I were you. I would postpone the vote. I would move it off the calendar. I would give Q a chance to show you what the problem is and who it is. He's coming. Don't do this. Don't do this. Please lead. Please lead this community, Kern County. Be an example. Stand up with us or without us. The Dominion machines are done, but people are going to Gitmo. That's Guantanamo Bay, military tribunal, firing squad, treason. Please don't do this. Please represent Kern County. We pay taxes to you. Clearly, we're paying for taxation without representation at this point. Change that today. Turn it around. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Supervisor Press?
Ma'am, can I ask you a question, please? And I'm so sorry for all of the distrust that is happening around the country in many ways and for many reasons. So, you know, I just want to hear from you.
Okay.
Who is Q?
You're going to find out. He's going to reveal himself. He's going to
Okay.
reveal himself. He's very.
Okay.
He's in charge of this. This is so. It's worldwide.
Okay.
It's worldwide. It's really important, and I appreciate you asking, but it's not my place to reveal Q. It's Q's place to reveal Q.
That's a person.
Is
Q a person?
In the military.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's big. It's very big. It's really important. Please do the right thing. It's never too late to do the right thing, but he's coming, and he's coming really soon, and it matters.
Next speaker, please.
Paul Infesti once again. I am sort of, I get upset when I hear people say we the people as though that means everyone here. I'm one of we the people too. So I do get a little angry when I'm hearing these kind of statements. And I just want to say that not all we the people believe that none of you are, I think all of you are consciously making decisions for us in the community and what you think that as you represent. And we have different ideas of how that happens. And we don't always agree with each other, but I don't question the patriotism or your citizenship at all, any of the five of the people who are up here or anybody else in the room. I really get offended when other people come up and make it sound like everybody is agreeing that everybody up here is not doing their job. You're all doing your job up here. You're all doing what you think is right. That's it. Oh, I'm a minute ahead. Thanks.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Okay, seeing none then, I'll close the public comment period and return to the board.
I'm punched in.
Supervisor Perez.
Thank you. Again, Ms. Bedard, thank you for your service and for this recommendation. You are the expert in this field. I trust and believe you. While we haven't met and spoke on this issue, I know your record and I know your work. I want to thank everybody for coming out too, and I want to deeply apologize for whatever lack of trust that exists with this government. We have to improve that at all times. I believe that, and I have deep respect for your concern. And I hope you can respect that we may have some differences of opinion. And my observation of Ms. Bedard over almost 20 years, she's a person that I consider to be of utmost character and integrity. Doesn't mean she doesn't make mistakes or her office doesn't make mistakes. Certainly that's true of all of us. But thank you, and I would like to make a recommendation on staff's recommendation, or a motion on staff's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Perez. We have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Couch.
Thank you. The reason that I asked for separate consideration of this is I want to just ask a couple of questions. So can I still do that?
Of course.
Okay. I think it was earlier this year in April that or maybe it was last year, the the years have run together when you get to be this age. We retroactively approved an agreement or a contract with Dominion earlier this year. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Somewhere around April?
Yes.
And it was retroactive to either January or December of the previous year.
That's correct.
Is that right? So, what if we were not to approve this today? What would happen? Because we went 4 months, or 3 months at least, last time. Do we still have that type of latitude?
As in simply postponing?
Correct.
This? Yes, I believe so. I mean, we do, I mean, obviously, we do ultimately need, you know, this involves the warranty and the license to be able to use the equipment, but over the next few months, I mean, if it's a matter of simply delaying it, yes, that would be possible.
Okay, I'm of the opinion, I would like to have much more in-depth discussion and conversation with you and with Amy before I am comfortable moving forward with this today, anyway. So I'm happy to do that over the holidays, because I know you're going to be working, and I will be here almost all the time, or early, right after the first of the year. But I can abstain from this if there's a second, or I can, or we can just take it up again in the new year, whatever the board is comfortable with. Thank you.
Supervisor Peters?
Thank you, Chairman. I agree, Supervisor Couch and Supervisor Perez. I appreciate your comments. I just would feel more comfortable, I think personally, given some of the conversation here today, if I had some time to consider all the issues that were brought up and take this issue back up at the first of the year. So I don't know if we need, if that's would be a referral or a different motion, but I would be in support of that.
Supervisor Perez?
Thank you so much. Can I ask you what you believe the consequences of that will be? You will not be here in January, of course, when the vote comes back, but do we have any, is this a major problem for members of the board to get a closer look at some things that clearly the public is concerned about, or certain members of the public, their constituents in particular?
I don't believe there would be a major problem with simply a delay in it, no.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Supervisor Maggard?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I suggested a few moments ago that it would be appropriate at the outset of Ms. Espinoza's tenure as Auditor, Controller, County Clerk, and Registrar of Voters that she explain to us if she has a plan of how to review the process. And I think, with no disrespect to Ms. Bedard, that Ms. Espinoza's recommendation for this would be more persuasive if, after she's given us an explanation of what she anticipates doing. That's not saying that yours is not persuasive, but I think there is so much criticism and question about this that it would have more of a basis after we've heard from Ms. Espinoza. I mean no disrespect for Ms. Riley, but my hesitancy to vote on this morning has nothing to do with Q or whatever that is. And with all respect for her and her opinions, this is based upon my concerns about this department and Ms. Espinoza's opportunity to weigh in on it and give us a recommendation as to what we should do. So I would prefer not to proceed with this matter this morning.
Thank you, Supervisor. I am looking at the calendar, and our first regular meeting appears to be on the 10th of January, and then we are dark, and then meeting again on the 24th of January. If the board was interested in continuing this item to a date specific, we could look at one of those two dates and then perhaps request that presentation from the new Auditor Controller, Ms. Espinoza, on one of those two dates. Mr. Alsop, I see you punched in. Do you have some thoughts along those lines?
Yeah, my read, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my read on where it looks like you're headed, I would recommend a referral to, not taking this item up today, but rather referring the new auditor controller in the new year to come back before your board, probably on January 24th. We just had a quick eye glance huddle here. January 24th may be the best date for that, to provide your board, present this item at that time to your board, and allow her at that time to provide any other remarks or comments relative to the elections. I didn't get a chance to eyeball meet Ms. Kraus up there, so I don't know if that's a good date for her, but January 24th, we would recommend making a referral to bring back this item on that date.
She's given me a nod, and so I think she's in concurrence with us on the 24th. So, I didn't hear a second on the original motion, asking if one of the board members would care to make a referral. Rather make a motion to continue this item number 12 to the 24th of January. And we could also include a request from our incoming auditor controller for a presentation on the elections department on that same date.
I will make that motion as you stated, Chairman Scribner.
A second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved. All ayes.
Thank you. That brings us to the conclusion of our business this morning. We do have 2 items to consider in closed session. Item 46 under the County Administrative Office and item 47 under County Council. So I will entertain a motion to adjourn to closed session.
So moved.
We are adjourned.